2019. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 15th, 2019, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Star Ledger and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 15th, 2019, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 15, 2019, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are on your right at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77.
Thank you, Abby. We have a roll call, please.
Yes, you may. Mr. Hughes?
Here.
Mr. Massa? I have not heard from. Mr. Mertens?
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Here.
Mr. Orozco?
Here.
Mr. San Clemente?
Here.
Mr. Saya?
Here.
Mr. Moretti?
Here.
And Chairman Nansen.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Tropoli, can you swear in the profession?
The record should reflect tonight we have Ms. Spiro, Mr. Cunliffe, Ms. Keane, and Mr. Howard, all sworn.
Thank you, sir. Approval of minutes.
There are no minutes this evening.
Vouchers.
No vouchers this evening.
Correspondence.
The only correspondence I have is an email from Mr. Landis. He is the attorney for 634 Field LLC. It's on tonight's agenda. One of his professionals could not make it this evening, so he asked that this application be carried to Monday, April 8th with no further notice. He also granted an extension of time to April 30th, 2019 for the board to act on the application.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience for case number BA 1807 634 Field LLC? This case will be carried to April 8th, 7:30 p.m. with no further notice. They did give us an extension of time.
Correct. And that's the only correspondence I have.
Resolution, case number BA 18-14, Nicholas and Lisa Zaza. Resolution granting appropriate eligible voters, Hughes, Massa, Mertens, O'Donnell, Moretti. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion from Mr.
Second.
Second by Mr.
Moretti?
Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Mr. Moretti?
Yes.
Resolutions memorialized.
Okay. Application before the board, case number BA 19-05, ECE Fit Howell LLC. Demand, Mr. Massa?
Yes.
Got it. I'll help you with that, Mr. Chairman, don't worry.
This is a temporary use permit. Applicant is EZ Fit Howell LLC. Demand
It's a Wonka.
as a Wonka?
Wonka.
Okay, as a Wonka. Applicant,
Has to put his mic on.
Quail Creek Shopping Center LLC, Michelle Rusnick, as a owner seeking a temporary use permit to allow.
Our microphone. Yeah. Okay.
Is that,
That's better.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Temporary use to allow EZ Fitness Center to operate a small group training, personal training class in Quail Creek Plaza on premises known as Block 3, Lot 1702, Unit 26, Ramtown, Greenville Road at intersection of Newton's Corner Road. Expiration date, June 4th, 2019. I can't hear, I've been in the truck all day.
Good evening,
Mr.
Mr.
Cohen.
Chairman, members of the board, board professionals. My name is Todd Cohen. I'm the attorney for the applicant, which is Easy Fit Howell LLC. I also have the owner of the shopping center, which is Quail Creek Shopping Center LLC, represented by Michelle Rusnick tonight, in case there's any questions. Basically, my clients signed a lease, started renovations in the Quail Creek Shopping Center for a fitness center, and had to stop work as it was turned out not to be a permitted use in the NC zone. My clients on their own appeared before the Township Council on January 22nd, asking the council if they would be willing to change the zoning in that particular zone, for the uses in that zone to permit the fitness center. The town council left them encouraged and recommended that they come to the zoning board to obtain a temporary use permit, which will allow time for the township to amend their ordinance, and either, they haven't decided if they're gonna either go the conditional use or permitted use, but they need time to figure that out. And thus, we're here this evening seeking the temporary use permit. We have in fact received a review letter from T&M Associates dated February 7th, and I appreciate them turning that letter around so quickly. What I'd like to do is introduce to you Jamon Izanawuka,
Yes, sir.
who is the owner of Easy Fitness. I'd like him to testify about the type of use, why he wants to come here, and then we have a litany of questions that we're prepared to answer that were brought up in the T&M letter as to the particular use, which we put on the record this evening.
Okay, want to swear both your witnesses
That'd
in,
be great.
please?
Can you both stand and face the attorney?
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you will give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right, and sir, starting with you, may we have your name again for the record?
Yes, Jamad Izamuka.
Very good, sir. You may be seated. And ma'am, your name, please?
Sure. My name is Michelle Rusinek,
Can you spell your last name?
Rusinek.
Thank you. All sworn. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So, Jamon, you are the owner of Easy Fitness, is that correct?
Correct.
And you reside with your family in Howell, is that correct?
Correct.
And you presently own two similar facilities,
Yes, sir.
and where are they located?
In Neptune City and Brick Township.
And they're, could you describe the type of facilities that you have there?
Yeah, so it's a small group training / personal training studio. We train around 90% women, 10% men, and we do mostly weights and conditioning, strength and conditioning exercises. And we've been in the Neptune for going on 9 years, and the Brick going on 8 years.
Okay, and in your letter that you wrote to the board in support of the application, you made a distinction between a big box gym versus what your fitness center is. You call it a transformation center.
Yes, sir.
Could you just give the board a little more on the philosophy of what the transformation center is?
Yeah, so most big box gym, you can show up anytime and work out. What we do is not that. Our program is based on classes. People come to our gym to get transformed. So we're not just a typical gym. You have to book your classes. You come in and you work with a personal trainer. We have 1 or 2 personal trainers there, and they work in a group to help you transform your life over the course of the months you're training at our gym.
Okay. In the T&M letter in section B, there's a bunch of different questions. I just want to go over them with you and put these answers on the board. So what days and hours of operation are you?
Monday through Saturday, morning classes, we have 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and then 8 a.m. and 9:15 a.m. And then in the evenings, we'll have the 4 p.m., 5 p.m., and 6 p.m.
So from 10:15 until 4 o'clock, there's really no use of the gym?
None.
Okay. And the maximum number of people that you have per class?
We have an average of 15 people in the class.
How many?
15.
15.
15. The max we'll have will be in the 5 and 6 a.m., which should be up to 20 people, because that's when most people try to get it in. But throughout the day, it will be an average of 15.
And the maximum amount of employees that are there?
It's
at,
2.
Is 2. So the most people you'll have on site at any one given time is 22,
22.
and that's only usually during the 2 classes.
In the morning, yes, sir.
Everybody that takes your classes is over 18?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All classes are scheduled, though? There's no, like, you can't drop into the gym if you want to work out?
No, there's no drop-ins.
I think we talked about the maximum instructors will be 2 at any one given time, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any time gap between your classes?
As of right now, no, the morning classes are back-to-back, except from the 8 to the 9:15 is that 15-minute time gap, and then the evening classes are 4, 5, and 6.
All activities will be inside the building, nothing outside?
Nothing outside.
And no external construction is proposed, everything will be internal, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the signage, you're just gonna have a sign
Sign
on
on
the
the-
sign
The
outside?
building, that's
On
already
the
there,
building,
yes.
okay. Mr. Chairman, there were 2 questions in the letter about parking. I'd like to direct them to Michelle, if I might, as the owner. Michelle, there was a question regarding the parking demand in the shopping center and whether that demand could accommodate this particular use. Could you comment on that?
Sure. We have 177 parking spaces in the main section of the plaza, and I referenced the surveillance footage, and there's always a lot of empty spaces. We have a very large parking lot that can definitely accommodate every single scheduled class that Jamont has.
So as the owner of this center, you would not have any concern with the amount of parking that would be required for this use?
No, none whatsoever.
And how does, and I think Jamont has already answered this question in a way, but the hours that he proposes to use the center don't really conflict with a lot of the hours that the other people use, the other tenants use the center, is that correct?
Correct. The morning hours are, right before a lot of the people get into work, so it's definitely a lot of spaces then, and even in the evening hours, there's always a lot of parking spaces available.
Thank you. That's really our presentation in a nutshell.
Okay, Charles?
Yeah, Todd, so you got a class at 9:15 that ends at what, 10:15?
10:15.
And then next class is 4 PM?
Yes, sir.
What goes on the facility between that time? Just maintenance, nothing? Is it closed up shop?
Nothing, actually. That if a trainer has a client, personal trainer, one-on-one, that they want to get in, like for lunchtime, it would be that, but there's no classes, there's no drop-ins or anything like that.
Okay,
There's only privately scheduled.
Only
training.
one-on-one training, yeah.
There is one-on-one training.
Yeah.
During that time.
Yeah, it's probably like 1 or 2 every other
How
day
many-
or so.
So how many trainers do you have on staff?
On staff, in that gym will be 2,
So at most, it'd be 2 people in those off hours from the classes.
yeah.
and then
Yes, sir.
another question I had, so there's no time gap in the morning or the evening?
No.
One of the things you might want to consider during the PM, as someone that goes to the gym a lot myself, that's usually a lot of the issues in the PM hours when people are getting off work. There are some restaurants, laundromats, and things like that. Having that 15-minute space allows parking to turnover. I know you said 20 in the morning. How many are you expecting during the evening from 4 to 6 PM in the class?
Right now, we have average 15 people.
15 people,
Yeah.
so, that's something the board should consider and the applicant should consider. You're looking at needing 30 spaces versus 15 spaces with the changeover. And then I just want to get on the record that they said there's not going to be any outdoor activities. I know sometimes when the CrossFit gyms come in and stuff like that, you get them running around the building in the fire lanes and stuff like that, so.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
doesn't
we're
sound
not
like
flipping
that's-
tires, we're not running outside, yeah, so.
That's all I have for the applicant right now.
Jen?
I have nothing. This is a temporary use permit request, and it seems like a relatively modest operation. So I have no objection, should the board act favorably on the application.
Mr.
I have
Tropoli?
2 questions. Do you plan any functions or tournaments where the public would be invited to your facility?
The only thing we do is the grand opening fundraiser we do for the fire department. We've done it for our Neptune Gym and Brick. That would be the only thing. The fire department is right there, so when we open the first 100 membership itself for the package, the challenge, would donate to the fire department. So that would be the only thing that would be the grand opening
Okay.
party.
And
Yeah.
what is the length of your lease?
It's at 3 years.
3-year lease? Thank you.
Mr. Cohen, I might have missed it. How long are you requesting the temporary use permit for?
We requested it for 2 years.
I think we would get behind that. We are looking to do some zoning changes. This might get wrapped up into a larger element for the whole town. So knowing how quickly the municipality can work and the process that it might take, I would recommend the 2 years at this time.
Now, Matt, just real quick,
That's the land use.
whenever the council changes, or who, my professional staff, who can answer this, once the council moves to rezone or add this as a permitted or conditional use, based on a permitted or conditional use, they would have to come back for a site plan? Or how would this work?
It depends which one. A permitted use, most likely not. A conditional use would have to.
Okay,
So it's going to depend on how we structure that new ordinance.
Would an existing conditional use have?
I would say if you could demonstrate to the zoning officer that you meet the conditions of the conditional use, it would be treated as a permitted use. But if there's any of those conditions, clearly that if you don't meet, then obviously you'd be back here.
Got it.
okay. Any questions from the board? Mr. Sayre?
Sir, it's been a while. So my question would be whether or not the NC zoning, does that affect like the dance studios and stuff that are in these type of shopping centers? Could you get Matt on that?
Jen?
Or Jen?
Can you ask that again?
In this zone, these shopping centers, the NC zone,
Yeah?
these dance studios that reside in these shopping centers, are they permitted uses or do they fit or?
There's, most likely that would be looked at as a commercial school, and that is a permitted use in an NC zone. There's a lot of gray between what's a fitness center, what's indoor recreation, maybe what's a commercial school. So we haven't really been asked that for this site yet. The commercial school and the fitness centers are relatively new uses. We never had those uses prior to 2017, so.
So as of right now, like a dance studio would be permitted, whereas this is more of a fitness center, which is not permitted. I understand that it may be semantics, but based upon how you define the use, that's how it's structured right now. I think what Matt is trying to tell us is that it appears that there's some changes to the zoning on the horizon in the near future, which will resolve that issue moving forward. And it's important a question to ask, to be perfectly honest, because we're going to have the same question on a subsequent application.
Well, my question then, to back that up as far as a dance school, if this was a fitness school, then it would be a permitted use, correct?
Well, we
Considered
have,
as a school, teaching.
Well,
The-
it's a little different. The difference between fitness training and learning how to dance, it's not quite the same thing.
Okay,
So I think that there are enough differences where those uses can be differentiated, which will come into play in one of the applications that we're going to hear later today. So, it may seem like semantics, but, there are a number of sources that differentiate between these types of uses. And I think that's what Matt is referring to, that he's trying to clean up moving forward.
Okay.
Because I really don't think one should be permitted and the other isn't, and I don't think that he disagrees, and so I think we're trying to clean that up.
Did you want to ask? Okay, what about martial arts?
That's not a
School-
fitness center. That's like it's like indoor recreation or some kind of instructional school. So it's, it's a little different than if I'm going to, and I'm not, I don't want to speak for you, so correct me if I'm incorrect, but if I want to go and like get fit and I make arrangements with one of your instructors, it's more like working out than it is being instructed in dance or martial arts. It's more like cardio and weight training and those types of things, which is more like a fitness center, albeit on a smaller scale and maybe more individual, but it's different than my 5-year-old goes to karate class. This is a little bit more personalized, and it's more in keeping with getting fit, right, and working out and being healthy and those kinds of things, versus I'm going to instruct you in martial arts.
Okay, so then I
Am
do
I,
have,
is that, I just want to, Todd, is that a fair statement?
Keep in mind, before 2017, we didn't have an indoor recreation use. We didn't have a commercial school use. We didn't have a fitness center use. These things were approved without classification as retail. Not a good spot for it, not an accurate depiction of what these uses are. So we're trying to define uses so we can have control over where they go, and we place them where we think we should, and the governing body does. Sometimes it takes applications like this to realize maybe something was missed, or maybe something belongs somewhere else, and we try and correct it. But we're trying to get more definition, less gray in the ordinance, and that means creating these uses and trying to follow through with them.
And also, Mr. Sayed, that's kind of why the council advised them to come for a temporary use, is that way they don't have to go through a full variance
Got it.
application, which costs a lot of money. And, at least the board can act now to give the council enough time to change, the zoning or add a permitted or conditional use. And it kind of helps the applicant out in a lot of ways.
so then I have one for the applicant.
Yes, sir. Go
All
ahead.
right, so then, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cohen, ma'am? In this type of facility, are you putting showers and stuff like that where?
No showers,
Lockers?
No lockers. So it's not, that's the difference. That's why it's not a big box gym, because that requires a whole different kind of permit and building out lockers and showers. No, people show up, they get trained, they go home. So we don't want people hanging out there in the locker room and the showers. We just want people coming and going. So.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, sir.
So you said in the morning they start 5 a.m. How long do they run? About
An hour.
an hour. And then the last one's at 9:15?
9:15 a.m. for the morning. Yes.
So that doesn't affect the other businesses that are in that shopping center?
Well, the 9:15, I wouldn't think so, because the 8 o'clock, that's where we have that time buffer actually. The 8 o'clock ends at 9, and then we'll have 15 minutes for the next one.
15
Yeah,
minutes.
so we have that.
And then the same thing at night, you go 4 to 5 and then 5 to 6?
Yeah, we'll go 4 to 5, and, bringing up what Charles was saying, if it is a problem where we need to put that 15 minutes, from the 4
Yeah.
to, and then have the 5 start at 5:15, that we don't see a problem with that, so.
Okay. All right, that's all I have, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mrs. Rosenek, the businesses over there, I notice, have 15-minute parking. That's generally the bagel place, so that would not really interfere, because people that are coming to this gym will be there longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah, so the whole purpose of the 15-minute parking spaces is specifically to leave room for the customers of the
Yeah.
bakery, the bagel shop, the pizza shop who are in and out, so that they're not inconvenienced.
Okay.
Anyone who's stopping in for longer should be advised, and the signs advise them to park further back.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any other professionals, any further testimony? Okay. Need to open the public, Mr. Tropoli, on this. Okay. Can I have a motion to open the public?
Make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Moretti. Seconded by Mr. Hughes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing anyone in the audience wish to come forward and ask a question or make a comment, please do so at this time. Seeing none, can I have a motion to close?
Make that motion?
Motion by Mr. Moretti, seconded by Mr. Roscoe. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any further from the professionals? Further from the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Before the board acts on the case, I just want to remind whomever makes the motion, you're not granting the temporary use temporary use permit. What you're granting is the board's approval or board's recommendation to the council, because it's the council that makes the approval, not the board. So the motion would be, assuming that you're arguing favorably, would be a favorable recommendation to the council for a 2-year temporary use permit. Thank you.
What's the pleasure of the board? Approve the recommendation to the council? Yes. Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Moretti. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Hughes? Yes. Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. San Clemente?
Yes.
Mr. Saya?
Yes.
And Chairman Nansen?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Mr.
luck.
Chairman.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
And just let the record show that Mr. Massa is now here. He arrived at 7:43 PM.
Okay,
My apologies for being late.
no problem. No worries.
No problem. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's all right. Thank you.
That was simple. Now you gotta go back to council. Council was already in favor of it. I watched it on TV.
Okay, next case on the agenda, case number BA 1826, Lakewood Farmingdale LLC. Preliminary and final major site plan. Application of Lakewood Farmingdale LLC as applicant owner seeking a use variance and minor site plan approval to continue to operate 3 separate commercial uses within an existing one-story brick building and expand the footprint of the parking area to accommodate the parking required for the proposed uses and construct handicap ramp for the access to the building, as well as trash refuge area associated turnaround spaces on premises known as Block 221, Lot 4.01, 200 Central Avenue. Expiration date, February 16, 2019. Mr. Pate.
Just head up there, you see, close to it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, board professionals, and public, good evening all. Am I being picked up?
Yes, sir, you sure are.
Thank you.
Are you an objecting attorney, or?
No, why am
I just had to ask that.
I always sit in this side, though.
That's fine, sir.
no.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm not an objecting attorney.
Okay, sir. I had to say that.
That's pretty, my name is Kenneth Pape. I'm an attorney with the firm of Heilbron Pape, and I have the privilege of representing your applicant this evening. And this is a request for a D3 conditional use variance and site plan approval for a property that was developed some 40 years ago. The reason that we're before you is that the building, which is a 10,000 square foot building on slightly greater than a 2-acre site, is occupied by 3 businesses. The businesses that are in the building are an accountant's office, a separate billing office, and there's an office where shipping of children's clothing that is ordered on the internet is taking place. And in this zone, the SED zone, multiple uses are not permitted in buildings unless they're 40,000 square feet in size. Something of an anomaly in the ordinance. And we're here before you with a site plan because despite all of our best efforts to try to find some prior approvals for this, and I think Mr. Howard will help me out a little bit on this, there's just no history of any approvals ever being granted for this property. We know the building's been there since at least 1983. No township approvals, no health department approvals, no county approvals, no approvals, no permits, anywhere. We don't understand how it occurred. Neither does the township.
Now, is this property part of that whole complex, or is this a separate?
Apparently, it was part of that whole complex at some time,
Okay,
but there's no approval.
so now is this subdivided off now?
It's a separate lot and block unto itself, yes.
Okay.
There's no record of that either, Mr. Chairman.
It's true.
How's the deed read?
I haven't reviewed that specifically.
There's a lot and block designation for it, and there's a tax record for it.
We have no history of prior tenants, even any building permits, change of use, change of occupancy. It's one of those that, we do have a few of those in town, and, they usually wind up here because of it.
So, in 1970, the records didn't come over from Tinton Falls?
I couldn't tell you.
Now, my main question would be, is whenever your client purchased the property, wasn't there a filed deed?
There was a deed, and he purchased it, and there was a deed conveyed to him. And it's an insurable interest, it has a lot and block designation, and it has a tax bill.
Wow.
And the issue all came to light when Mr. Howard brought to our attention that we had 3 uses, and because the building was not a 40,000 square foot building, those 3 uses could not continue without coming before this board. We then did the research to see what's the beginning. We did the Oprah request to see what's the beginning, and there is no beginning.
Okay.
So this evening, we have the opportunity to create credentials for this lot. And the reason I tell you that by way of background is there's a site plan, there's driveways, and there's a parking lot, and there's some landscaping, and there's lighting, but it was never approved, it was just built. And so amongst the things that we're going to present to you this evening are that we're going to ask for permission to fix the parking lot. We'll make the stalls the right size instead of them being 8 or 10 feet deep. We're going to offer to make them the correct size. And there is the requisite number of parking. There's no true trash enclosure. We're going to identify a trash enclosure. We met with, as we always do, we met with your commissions and we met with the fire department to work out details as to what their requirements are, and we'll offer those. And we have your staff's reports. Your staff has been very generous with their time, and we have met with Mr. Cunliffe a couple of times. I've gone over it with Ms. Beam, and I've gone over it with Ms. Spiro. And I've also spent time as recently as last week with Mr. Howard to go through the details. So what we intend to do this evening is to offer a site plan superimposed on what's there to bring it as close to standards as possible, and then to ask you for a D3 conditional use to allow the property to be used, this 10,000 square foot building, to have 3 tenants. The testimony will be presented by Peter Strong, who's the design engineer, Scott Kennel, who is our traffic expert, and Allison Coffin. And
Want to bring everybody up and let's swear everybody in?
okay.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear this testimony you give this evening to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Scott, starting with you, have your name for the record.
Yes, Scott Kennel, Kennel, with McDonough and Ray.
Thank you.
Allison Coffin, COFFIN, James W. Higgins Associates.
Thank you.
Peter Strong, STRONG, with Crest Engineering.
Very good. All sworn, and I have the handheld if you'd like to get it.
It's on. Thank you. Taking over my job.
I was the AV guy in high school.
Okay.
This is a funny case.
And before we begin, Mrs. Pariser, who's seated in the row next to Allison Coffin, is here representing her family, and her family's the owner of the building.
She's not gonna testify.
I didn't intend, no. I just asked that she be here to show respect for the board, to show that the family was here, would be physically present as the board made their deliberations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Peter, I'm going to ask if you could share with the board your professional and educational background.
Sure. I have a degree in civil engineering from what was then Newark College of Engineering, now New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1971. Became a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey in 1975. A licensed professional planner in 1978. Also hold a license in the state of Florida for professional engineering, and I had one in the state of Pennsylvania for many years before I gave it up just recently. I started the Crest Engineering business in 1981, and have continued since that time to practice civil engineering, site plans, and subdivisions, and I've testified before this board and the Howell Planning Board on numerous occasions, as well as many other planning boards in the surrounding area.
We accept credentials.
Thank you. And Mr. Strong will testify this evening as a professional engineer. I'm going to ask if you could introduce the exhibits that you've prepared. Perhaps we label the exhibits before we go into your narrative presentation of the testimony.
Sure. I have three displays. First one is an aerial display, which
We can mark that as 812 is your next exhibit. Okay. Right. Next exhibit, 813, description for the record.
that is a copy of the aerial map showing the proposed site improvements.
J13.
And the third one is we're calling a site display, which is just a colored rendering of the
A14.
site plan without the aerial background.
Very good. All marked.
Howell Township did not start holding its own planning.
Peter, would you, if you could, beginning with A12, just bring all of us to this property. Bring us to the part of Howell Township where this property is located, and then if you could briefly describe surrounding uses.
Yes, I'd be happy to. This property is known as Lot 4.01, and it used to be Block 49, now it's Block 221. It's located at the intersection of Lakewood Farmingdale Road and Central Avenue, just south of the borough of Farmingdale. Birdsall Road comes into the site from the east, just right near the very southern point of the property. It is a little over 2 acres in size, improved with an existing 10,000 square foot building with parking lots, 2 small parking lots on the north and south end of the buildings. To the southwest is an industrial complex of various buildings and uses of an industrial type nature, manufacturing and shipping and trucking along Central Avenue for the most part. To the north, there's a residence, and farther than that, several other additional residential properties going up to Matthews Road, which is to the north. On the east side of Lakewood Farmingdale Road, there's a farm area that is also apparently been purchased by the DEP as part of open space, and a wooded area farther to the south of that, going down to the north side of Birdsall Road, and then another residential property on the other side of Birdsall Road on the southeast corner.
I can't tell.
The
You have to talk right into that mic. We're having trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
yeah.
I'll try.
That's
There you go.
way better, yeah.
Okay.
So if we could go to the next exhibit, the proposed layout superimposed on the aerial.
Right.
I'm going to ask if existing building, existing parking lots, if you could just take us through what the elements of improvements that we're asking this board to consider this evening.
Sure. Again, the 10,000 square foot building is shown in the orange color. To the north of that is a single loaded driveway with parking along the north side of that. And to the south is another single loaded driveway with parking to the south. The spaces themselves and the driveways that currently exist are not in conformance with the current ordinance regulations. So we're adding pavement to the driveway and the parking spaces themselves in order to, on the south side of the building, for example, we were providing a 30-foot driveway and upgrading the parking spaces to be at least 9 feet wide and at least 18 feet long, or 19 feet long as required by the ordinance. To the north side, we're upgrading the driveway again by adding pavement to the northerly side of the lot so that the driveway can be at least 22 feet wide per your regulations with 10 feet wide parking spaces, again, that are 19 feet long. So we will have then 34 spaces of the required size by the township ordinance regulations. We are also adding a handicapped ramp to the front entranceway, which it currently lacks, and there are 2 handicap spaces that we're creating in the front of the building, which is on the south end, that conform with the current regulations and will be provide the handicapped accessibility that we're required to have. We're also, right now, the trash is, there's a dumpster that sits on the pavement in the back of the building, and we will be creating a trash enclosure, which would have a masonry 3 sides around it with gates, and then we're adding some pavement to create a turnaround area so that the trash trucks can come in, pick up the trash from the enclosure, and then turn around and go out efficiently. In addition, we're adding landscaping around the sign and the
Mr.
parking.
Hang on just a second here.
Yep.
With the trash enclosure,
Yep.
Jen, that would need a variance, because wouldn't that be in the front yard?
It's not within the front yard setback.
But it would
It's
be
not within the front
considered in
yard
the
setback.
front yard.
Still in the front.
Yeah, so they consider the front yard from the face of the building to the right of way.
Right, so you're in front of the building.
Okay.
Central Ave isn't a right of way, it's an access easement, so Lakewood Farmdale Road is your frontage.
Okay.
Right.
So we would need a variance for that.
Okay.
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 Yep.
Or we need to move it.
Yeah, for the record, our notice did state that in the event that additional variances or waivers become known as a result of the feedback of the board members or the board's professionals, the applicant is considered to have placed the public on notice of that.
Okay.
So, I'm going to ask if you could, if we go to the next plan, the site plan, and without that overview of the improvements that are proposed, I'm going to ask if together we can go through them individually. So, and I'm going to do them in categories, if you would.
Sure.
So, is there any regrading of the property that's required to make these improvements as are proposed?
Essentially, no. The site is relatively flat. We need to, clear out some grass areas, put some pavement in, but there's no real regrading going on here, no.
It's kind of a remedial touch-up of a site plan that was implemented without approvals.
Correct.
Second, is there any stormwater facilities on the site currently, and are you introducing stormwater facilities as part of this site plan?
There currently are no stormwater facilities on the site. Everything runs off overland to, there's a storm drain that's off-site to the northwest, and another one out front near the intersection of Central Avenue and Lakewood Farmingdale Road. Everything travels overland. However, we are going to be picking up the roof drainage, which currently there are 2 downspouts from the roof in the northwest and southwest corners of the building. All of the roof runoff travels to those locations, and we're going to be picking that up and putting that underground into dry wells to control the runoff from the roofs. And the area that we're creating that's going to be new impervious area is only about half of the area of the roof of the building, so that we're actually going to be handling more water and putting it back into the ground than we're creating runoff from by putting in the additional pavement. So there'll be a net loss in the runoff to off-site properties.
No stormwater facilities as part of this facility, and we're introducing stormwater facilities to the
That's
site.
correct, yep.
And landscaping. You have a landscaping plan, but I'm going to say more important is guidance that came to us in the form of a written report from Ms. Spiro indicating the additional landscaping that's requested. I'm going to ask that we begin, there's a request that we trim trees that are in need of being trimmed, trees that are blocking visibility, or trees that are hanging over buildings, or trees that are creating a danger. No issue at all indicating that we'll comply with the trimming request made by Ms. Spiro.
No issues there, no.
And there's also a request that in the corner of the property where the enclosure is shown, if you could identify that, that a 50-foot wide 4-season buffer with landscaping and fence be installed, because that's the only place that we're adjacent to a residence. Any issue complying with that requirement?
So did you say 50 feet? 50 feet wide?
Shall contain, well, right, we don't have 50 feet. We have what we have, right.
I have no problem putting in more landscaping, but I don't know if I can get 50 feet in there.
So we would agree to a 4-season landscaping plan with a fence around that dumpster in the area adjacent to the residence.
Yes. We are showing landscaping, and then the enclosure is a wall already around the actual dumpster, but I have no problem with putting additional landscaping and an additional fence to further hide it, yes.
We're asked that we introduce along Central Avenue, street trees, 2.5-inch caliper, 40 to 60 feet on center. Any issue with that?
No,
Comply with that?
no issues.
And the balance of the comments, and if I may, if Ms. Spiro wants me to go through them, are recommendations for changing either the size or the species of plantings. And we've gone through those with no exceptions. All of those are acceptable. So there's a landscaping plan that you've offered. The comments of Ms. Spiro are acceptable.
Yes,
Next is a lighting plan.
right.
Let's, Ms. Spiro, you have any further?
Just to clarify, regarding the pruning comment, from, aerial views and street views, it just looks like the trees that are on the neighbor side come towards their
In here?
properties. So, yeah, over there. So where they're expanding and fixing the parking, it just looks like there might be some conflict. So I'm expecting they're going to need to do some pruning in
Right.
order, to not destroy everything as they use the equipment in that area. So I asked for some notes to be provided in the plan, and just to use a, licensed tree service and such. If they don't need to prune, they don't have to, but it looks like they're gonna have to cut something over there.
Right, no problem.
Also, Charles, just out of looking at this, where the trash enclosure is being proposed, what happens if you move that to the other side and let the truck back up to that?
So that was the actual topic of discussion when Ken came and met with me earlier in the week. It can be shifted. I think it gets a little tight with the turning movement, though. I would like to see something on a plan with either a dump truck or a fire truck being able to actually maneuver that K-turn there. What's gonna happen is you're gonna shorten the area on the northern side of that turnaround, and it's just gonna get a little bit tight to make that coming back out of there. Certainly, it'll move it away from the residential, but we still wanna make sure that trucks can get in and out of there.
Right. Earlier, that idea came up during one of the staff discussions, and I ran it past Peter, and I know that we've got to design it to make certain that, but you expressed that you're comfortable that you could switch the dumpster and the turnaround facility.
Yes.
And accommodate it. So we'd have no problem doing that, Mr. Chairman.
I'd just like that to be accommodated with, maybe a one page with a template just showing that that can still work.
Sure, no problem.
Do you have a problem with that, Charles?
I mean, technically, it's in the front yard, so, you're gonna need relief from it anyway. It's gonna probably need some additional landscape plantings, not just around, the enclosure, but the rest of the turnaround there. I'd defer to Sherry on that.
But it gets it away from the residential, and then you'll
Oh,
be
yes.
able to provide more buffer,
Certainly,
more of a tree buffer by
certainly.
it being away from the residential.
Certainly, I just wanna make sure that it's still accessible, you know what I mean? That little stub on the northern side there is not as big as on the southern side there, so we wanna make sure that you can still get the full K-turn and get out of there.
Right.
But, Mr. Chair, I do agree with Charlie that not just the enclosure needs to be screened, but the entire
Corner.
turnaround needs to be
Yeah.
screened.
That was our understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's our understanding.
Okay.
So may I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Very good, thank you. So next element of the site plan is lighting. If you could describe the type of lighting that is proposed, and then I also want to talk about the relief for the lighting that is requested.
Yes, the lighting that's there currently, let's start with that, consists of two floodlight fixtures, one on the front at the entranceway and one on the back, attached to the roof of the building and pointed outwards to the parking lot. That's the current lighting plan. What we're proposing is a number of 16-foot-high poles that would be on the area, basically on the outside of the parking lot areas with shoebox-type fixtures pointed downwards so that they wouldn't be glaring out, and would be LED-type lights that would provide efficient lighting to the entire parking lot without potentially disturbing neighbors with glaring lights. And
If I recall, the standard for lighting is 0.5 foot candles average, and we're at 0.9.
right.
And I think it'd be best to describe it, if we went to the 0.5, we're going to have some dark spots, and even at 0.9, it's a very, very soft light. We're asking for the design waiver to be allowed to have an average of 0.9 foot candles in these parking fields.
Right, we meet the minimum standards, but we don't meet the
Average.
average, which is extremely difficult to do, especially with the newer LED lights. I think that the ordinance is sort of antiquated as far as how it's structured.
So, Mr.
And
Chair.
again, I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Chair, what I will say is, this is the second iteration of the plans. In the first set, the lights on the north side of the building actually pointed towards the residential. They since revised that and flipped them to the other side of the parking lot, so they're pointing towards the building. Additionally, they will have like the house shield, so you're not going to get any blowback glare.
Right.
Will they be on a timer, any dimming after typical work hours?
We would gladly put them on a timer, so that after say a half hour after the last person leaves the building, it can go dark.
What time would that be?
The accountant business is a little bit seasonal. I mean, typically, everybody's out of the building by 7 o'clock, but in-season accountants have a tendency to stay a little bit later.
Do you have somebody to testify to that?
Well, we're going to...
I don't want you to testify.
Well, as the property owner's representative, I can proffer to you that there are 3 uses in the building. There's an accountant, there's a
Okay.
shipping office, and there's a billing office.
Okay.
And we're very comfortable that the hours of operation will conclude no later than 7 o'clock.
Okay.
But it's an honest statement to say sometimes accountants during season stick around a little bit later.
So would it be fair to say that by 10, you could anticipate the lights being off?
Off, that would be a very easy statement to make, yes.
That makes it
Sure.
easier.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Chair, just one last comment
Yes,
on the
sir.
lighting plan. So there is a little bit of gap for the K-turn area on the current lighting plan. Being that you're going to be relocating the traffic issues container to that area, I would say maybe some building mounted lighting, or if you can reconfigure the position of that light to make sure you're still getting coverage of all the turnaround areas. Maybe you want to talk about the typical hours of trash collection. Is that going to be daytime hours? Is that going to be after hours?
Yeah, I went over that. Trash collection will not be in the evening hours or the overnight hours. The trash collection will be, because it's private hauler, it'll be scheduled during the business day. The trash vehicle can easily maneuver through the driveway to the trash receptacle while there's cars in the parking lot. It's not in conflict. So
Okay.
it would be during the business day.
During, I would say no earlier than 8 o'clock,
Oh, that's fine.
okay?
Yeah, that's
Because if you got a resident, especially having the residents that close.
no problem at all.
One last thing on the lighting.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Strong had mentioned that our ordinance is rather outdated on our lighting, antiquated, I think you said. The township recognizes that, and of our many ordinance changes this year, it's at the top of our list, just so the board is aware that we're trying to, it's a very common variance or waiver that's being granted almost every case. We recognize it.
Hard to hit that average.
Thank you. Okay,
Sure. So Peter talked about parking. There's parking lots that are there, again, parking lots that were built without the benefit of a design or a site plan, and the parking stalls are the wrong size. So, Peter, if you could just briefly describe where additional asphalt is required so as to create conforming parking stalls.
Yes, I think I sort of did that already, but the lighter gray on the north and south sides of the building is the existing pavement area, and then the darker gray is the expansion of the parking lot in order to make the driveways and the parking spaces of the required size, including for the handicap spaces, to meet the ordinance and ADA requirements.
And the number of parking stalls, I believe, is 34 parking stalls,
There are 34 parking stalls
Which is-
proposed, which is
which is the correct number of
Which is the
parking
correct
stalls.
number at the township's parking ratio for office space, full office space.
And there's also another parking lot on our client's property. We don't know why it's there, but it's there. And if you could identify that parking lot.
Yeah, Central Avenue used to be a public street. It was vacated a few years ago, and a easement was retained over the paved areas by there's some sort of a lot owners association that has responsibility for it. And my speculation to some degree on this is that when it was a big complex that was owned by whoever owned it at the time, there were parking spaces that were put in along the roadway on either side of it, adjacent to where the guardhouse was, showing right in the front here where this little brown area is. So there were parking spaces that were there that were used for whatever purpose. They still are there, and they're available to us if we need overflow parking for any reason. So there's an additional 12 or 14 spaces, I think, that are out there, so we could actually
Ken.
claim 48 spaces on this site.
Is there any deed restriction to those parking spaces or anything like that? So anyone in the complex or the public can use?
Well, they're on our property.
They are on your property. Okay, how about on the other side of the street though? There's parking spaces on the?
That's on another lot
That's
altogether.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
across the street.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, on typical days of business, are you anticipating any overflow parking onto Central Ave there?
I went over it with my clients. They've never used those parking spaces.
Okay. Now, how about in peak tax period
Yeah.
when you have everyone coming in to do their taxes?
The only time that there's ever a peak is during tax season, and the peak is typically on a Sunday. There are no business hours on Saturday here. On a Sunday, and that peak, if there were one, would occur when the other businesses are not operating. There's just never been a need. But there's 14 spaces on our property above and beyond what the ordinance requires, and They're on our property.
Is there a particular day of the week that would be occurring on?
The only day that I can ever envision it occurring would be on a Sunday. The other peaks disappear on a Sunday, so it probably is a non-event. It's probably a non-event.
Now, you said it meets the criteria of the parking based on office. Now, did you calculate the existing businesses? There's 3 different businesses. What the parking regulations for each of those businesses are compared into this?
When Mr. Kennel is up, we'll go through those. So what you have is an accountant, that's an office, a billing office, which is an office, and then the other one is one of those uses that doesn't have a definition yet, and it's the fulfillment where people are shipping out, this happens to be children's clothing, they're shipping out children's clothing either through the mail or through UPS. Fulfillment office, it would be a lesser use.
So, Mr. Chair, what I would say is, based on our office use, which is one of the most strict requirements in the ordinance, they're providing 34 spaces. Now, the uses that they're actually operating out of the site would require probably less of a parking demand, so I think that they're providing enough parking on site for the proposed uses. They've used a higher criteria for the, based on the uses that they have on the site.
That's correct.
He said it way better than I did.
Okay, now, my other question would be, if one of those uses changes, because that's a tenant, what happens?
I think that they need to characterize the operation of those businesses and then institute proper conditions in the resolution, to define those in the approval. So that way, if something comes in, they're saying it's just, clothing distribution, and then they're operating, textile manufacturing out of there now, and then it's a higher intensity of a use, and you're getting larger vehicles coming in there for deliveries, then obviously the parking demand might change, and then circulation might change with that as well.
Okay.
I don't know if Matt has any additional comments to that.
May I?
No, that's about it. Mr. Pape and I had met about this, and we talked about what happens when they change. As Charlie had said, the office use is one of the more strict parking standards we have. So the primary thing I'll be looking at is the parking demand. Based on the square footage, there's extra parking here. If that works without any other major change to the site, like Charlie mentioned with deliveries, truck traffic, hours of operation, then it would be a straight tenant-to-tenant change through administrative approval.
Okay. My other question is deliveries and pickups, is there adequate loading space for that?
Coming up, if I may, that issue of uses occurred to us in the last 10 days. So I made an appointment with Mr. Howard, and together we talked about what would be the appropriate description of uses that would fit. And he asked that I begin with the SED zone, we're in the SED zone, and eliminate anything that would create a demand on the site that can't be accommodated by what Peter's designed. So there's got to be 20 or so uses. The only ones that we would ask for permission is offices, financial institutions, medical facilities, distribution, and light assembly and packaging. All of the other uses appear to be inappropriate, and all of the other uses are
Do you have an
manufactured.
issue for that to become part of the resolution?
No, we would, I think, rather than me coming here every time a tenant changes, which is good for me and not for anybody else, I think having this list of uses that's appropriate for the building, and Matt and I went over them.
I agree, because this makes my job a lot easier going forward.
No, I know, that's why I'm asking, if it's part of the resolution, then
Absolutely.
we don't have an issue.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Loading, we talked, but there's no true loading for the office building,
Correct.
but the facility for the trash enclosure has the K-turn facility built into it. And except for the 3 times a week that there's a trash vehicle there for a few minutes from taking the dumpster, it is, we believe, an ideal location for the UPS, the FedEx, and the mail truck to come in park, run in, and then there's the K-turn opportunity just to turn around and leave.
Now, is there an entranceway at this K-turn area?
No.
Oh, entrance to the building?
Yes.
The entrance to the building is, Peter, if you could just identify with
Right there.
two entrances. Well, there's one on each side.
Okay, now, what about,
There-
is there access to the building from that rear parking lot, though?
There are some doors to access the building from the rear as well, and then there's also a walkway that runs from the north to the south to get around the building if it's necessary.
But if deliveries are being delivered in the back of the building, they're not going to be coming around to the front of the building, correct?
So in last week's meeting with Mr. Cunliffe, we talked about putting a short section of sidewalk from the K-turn area to the sidewalk that's going into the building on that side.
This way?
There would be an opportunity.
I think that would be appropriate. That way you're keeping them out of the driveway aisle for cars coming in and out of the site. Granted, it's all the way back, tucked into the back of the parking area, so you're not going
Oh,
to get a
there.
whole lot of traffic back there. But if they provided some sidewalk tying that into the building, I think that would be appropriate.
In the rear?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I just don't see them taking packages out of there all the way from the front, all the way to the back, you know? That's my only.
Well, Ken, you do have an entrance on the north side there, right?
Yes,
There's two.
There's a door right there.
So what are you talking about? Are we
So-
10 feet of concrete to get it, 20 feet of concrete to get it back there?
I
or-
think about 20, 25 feet of sidewalk, yeah.
Okay.
And that, the issue that you spotted, Mr. Chairman, was one that we spotted when we were going over it together. So that's, the last element of the site plan is signage. This property came with a sign. There's a sign that identifies the industrial park. It doesn't identify us. It's on our property. It's been there since before our client owned it. We'd like to introduce a sign near our driveway that identifies the building and its tenants. We propose it to be a monument sign. The monument detail that we provided was not a true monument because it did not have masonry across the bottom. It had an open area. Mr. Cunliffe pointed that out to me. Peter, comfortable modifying the sign so that there is a solid element?
Yes,
So it's
that's
true
easily done.
monument style?
Yep.
If you could identify where that sign would be and some of its general
Sign is
characteristics.
right here, just before the main entranceway into the building parking area.
Jim, would that require variance because there's two monument signs?
They have two frontages,
Yeah, but both of them are on the same frontage, so.
but it's really for the business park. It's not really for them in particular.
But it's on their property, though.
I would hate to say yes, because it's really not their sign. And they have two fronts.
Okay.
You know, it's not a corner either, it's like two separate fronts. But I would say, Ken, you might be safe in just getting the relief.
I published for it.
I would not be opposed to the relief being granted, specifically because it's really not their sign, and they kind of inherited it at this location. I probably would encourage you to get the relief just to protect yourself moving forward, if you're not opposed to that.
No, we thought that was prudent, and in fact, in the legal notice that I published, I actually identified that there was a second sign for which we felt there would be variance relief required.
Okay.
Right.
So those are the site elements of the plan that takes us through the grading and the drainage, the parking, circulation, and the loading, landscaping, lighting, and signage. Peter, you've seen the staff reports. Together, we just went through Ms. Spiro's, which we addressed. We also have a staff report from Chief Lewis. I met with Chief Lewis on this twice. He was comfortable with the design and issued a report on August 28th indicating he has no objections to the proposed use to allow the three businesses, and also pointing out that there was adequate access to all sides of the building. The Farmers Advisory Committee took no objection. The Environmental Commission last summer also issued a comment letter indicating that there are no objections, no comments based on the information that the applicant presented to them. And you've also seen Mr. Cunliffe's most recent report, which was updated through February 4th.
Yes.
And there are a number of technical recommendations that are contained in that report. Are you comfortable advising the board that you're familiar with the report and you can and will work with Mr. Cunliffe to satisfy those requirements?
Yes, I am.
If I may, is there anything, Mr.
Charles,
Cunliffe, that you
anything
would like me
else?
specifically to speak to on the report?
Yeah, so like Ken said, they are providing some recharge for the building. They're not technically required to. They're under a quarter acre of new impervious, not disturbing more than an acre. So whatever they're doing is certainly going to help the situation out there. They will have overflow drains on
Yes.
them. And then when they do overflow, it's going to follow the natural drainage course and end up where it once originally went, right?
That's correct. Yep.
The parking area, you're not proposing any curbing?
No.
I wouldn't take any exception to that. Anytime you start put curbing on a parking lot without any drainage, you're worrying about causing a drainage issue where there isn't any before.
Right.
Just to clarify for the pavement, you're only putting new pavement in the areas where you're widening it to make the spaces more conforming and to widen
That's
the
correct.
driveway aisles?
Yes.
Okay.
The rest of the pavement seems to be in reasonably good shape.
Good shape, okay. What I will say is relocating the lights to the north side of the parking area, are you gonna have to cut new conduit chases through the parking area?
That's true, yes.
Obviously, we wanna make sure that that gets reconstructed.
Right.
Fire, I guess, didn't have any issue with the layout with not having 360-degree circulation.
Right.
Okay. The driveway out to the north, so there isn't a dimension provided on the actual driveway. I would just ask that that be added and make sure you're matching that 22-foot wide all the way out to the.
Yeah, that actually, I saw your report, and I think Jen pointed out in her report too, that was the intent, that we would have the 22-foot wide throat at the driveway to match the new driveway that we're creating along the the north side of the building. So we will modify that curb to make sure that that happens.
And then in item C in our letter, there's just a couple construction details that need to be added with bollards and
Bollards, right.
stuff. That's
Yep.
fine.
No problem.
And then the last question I think I have, if I can remember it.
Sidewalk?
Yeah, you're gonna add the sidewalk there on the K-turn, right?
Yeah.
Oh, about
Yep.
waiver from sidewalk, yeah,
Yes.
so, technically, they need, waiver for sidewalk across the frontage. This is a corner lot, so I guess they got the two frontages there. It doesn't look like from review of aerials that any sidewalk exists. This is a commercial property.
No, none.
I guess you're asking for the waiver also for the private sidewalk out to the right-of-way as well?
We are
Right.
asking for that relief, and only because, as you can see from the aerial photograph, there isn't a sidewalk anywhere in the area. There's
How, if people are parking on Central, how do they get to the site, into the building?
It's,
They would walk along Central Avenue and come in the driveway.
it just hasn't occurred.
If the board is concerned about safety, that's something that would certainly ease their concerns, making sure people can get to and from the building or to and from the two parking areas. I think that would go a long way in easing their concerns there.
If you'd like to see a sidewalk that connects,
I would connect in, at least into the other drive aisle.
so a sidewalk that begins at the northern terminus of the parking lot that's on Central Avenue and attaches to the driveway of the parking field.
We can do that.
It's kind of hard because people pull in, they're going to walk in Central anyway behind the cars. So, unless there's a sidewalk in front, it kind of defeats the purpose of putting a sidewalk across there.
As I said, Mr. Chairman, it's there.
Yes.
We took no credit for it, and we've never used it.
Charles?
Yeah, and two more things. So, like I said, technically, you need a residential buffer along the northern property line because you do have a residence to the north there. I will say that approximately 3/4 of that property is wooded from Central Avenue. There is some wetlands on that property too, so whether that can actually be built upon in the future, who knows? But the last third, I would say, from the back of the building, so the eastern side of the building to Lakewood Farm Mill Road is open. There is existing fencing there. We made a suggestion about possibly putting in vertical slats because it's chain link fence. I imagine Jen is going to chime in.
I would love to see something other than chain link fence because that's not what I would consider the most aesthetically
Really?
that's not what I would consider an aesthetic alternative.
As Peter indicated, the dumpster is going to be enclosed, but introducing a solid fence, perhaps just in that area around that dumpster, a solid vinyl fence, and then incorporating it into a landscaping plan, I think is the direction that Mr. Cunliffe and Ms. Spiro were leading us.
Right.
And we have no problem with that.
I'm not sure that we're talking just around the enclosure. I'm thinking
No.
we're talking about
I
along
think they're
that
talking
property
about
line.
that property line.
Because technically, you need a 50-foot buffer over there, which you don't have.
I agree, but that's all wooded and most of it's wet. I'm putting a fence up to screen myself from a wooded wetland.
At least screen the residential.
Absolutely.
I would say, though, that as you get close to Lakewood Farmingdale Road, to have a 6-foot-high solid fence requires relief because it's a front. So I would just make sure that, that house looks very close to your property line. How far away is it?
I don't know exactly, but I
mean, it
would
looks like it's
venture
almost on
30
the
to
line.
30 to 40 feet. So the house is actually right here, and then there's a parking driveway area that's actually adjacent to the fence and the property line.
So, I would advocate a solid fence between the two,
Yeah.
Yes.
and then maybe,
I don't think they need to go all
To the front of the
way.
house or something?
what'd you say?
I don't think they need to go all the way down the property line, though.
No, I don't either. I would say to the
At least
rear-
to the trash enclosure.
I would say the parking lot, including the trash enclosure, to like the
Lakewood
rear of the
Farmingdale.
building.
Right.
Because I don't really want it to go all the way to the street, because that
Got
would
it.
be kind
Right.
of,
Okay.
I actually envisioned that the fence would then kind of
Can't.
turn a little bit, just create a little bit of a, instead of.
turn like
Turn
to the.
into our site, so it just kind of follows the contours of the.
Because now you.
Make an
If
L
you
out
could
of it?
just show us what that
Sure.
would look like, I
Sure.
think that we could work it out.
I think
But
we're
I
all
would like
saying
a
the
solid, I
same
would
thing.
like
Go
a
this way.
solid fence, as
And we're
opposed to the chain
comfortable
link.
with that
Yeah.
being a solid fence.
I think that's a good alternative.
Chairman, and then just one last item. Technically, across the street there to the east, Lot 4 and 5 is a Q farm, so you have a 50-foot farm buffer across the front there. They're not
Right.
proposing any new plantings or anything like that, other than around the K-turn. I will say that there is some fencing and street trees along that frontage that are existing that look to appear from the original, development there. Do you have any additional comments? Are you proposing anything? I mean, you have the right-of-way of Lakewood Farmingdale Road, in addition to that 50 feet, but there is no, plantings other than the existing fence and wall. So-
For the last 40 or so years, it's been a lawn followed by the right-of-way, and respectfully, we're not doing anything back there. We'd like to leave it that way.
See, also, I just want to say, this is a pre-existing, that's been there for 40 years, 50 years.
Right,
Yes.
but as we talked about when they first got here, there's no record of any approval.
I understand.
So I think what Charlie's trying to say is that technically they need the relief. I
Okay.
don't think you're taking any exception to the relief being granted.
Okay.
I just want to make it on the
I'm just-
record and make sure that
I
it's
just
I
want to make
know.
clear.
sure that everything's clear so that they don't run into an issue down the road where
Right.
there's something not,
Thank you.
Okay.
categorized.
As we write this property's birth certificate, let's get all the details on it.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Saya, did you have something?
Mr. Chairman, we've been doing this for a couple of decades now. And, we know the brooks in the area. There's a brook east and west of both this property. You are adding impervious surface to this particular property, right? You say that there's no records, and the stormwater management plan, is addressing, 2 wells that are going to hold, 9,000 gallons of stormwater, right? In your professional opinion, Charlie, what are we doing here?
So technically, for this current development, the stormwater regulations for the township and the state of New Jersey, if you're not creating a quarter of acre of new impervious coverage, which they are not, or you're not disturbing 1 acre of land, you're not required to provide any stormwater. Now, they are providing roof recharge to aid in some of the new impervious that they're putting in there. I will say that the report, and we noted in our letter, is a little bit misleading. They say that they're, doing the 10-year storm. It's not actually that, it's more closer to the water quality storm. I just ask that you clarify that in a revised stormwater report that can be provided under resolution compliance, should the board rule favorably.
Okay.
But per the NJDEP stormwater regulations, they're not required to provide any stormwater management for this facility because they're under those thresholds.
Adding the parking spaces doesn't require oily water separator or anything like that?
No, you're not triggered. If you're not over a quarter acre of impervious or 1 acre of total disturbance, you don't have to meet any of the stormwater regulations.
That's correct.
That's both your township ordinance and the state regulation. So the 10,000 square feet, and we're 4,000 square feet and change.
That answer your question?
Well, you know, I know.
I know.
You know, I'm thinking of Mr. Ken Allen, the late Mr. Allen.
Yeah.
Allen, you know. Absolutely.
I have nothing further of Mr. Strong, Mr. Chair.
Any questions from the board, Mr. Strong? Not professionals, any further? Okay.
I have Mr. Kennel here, who is going to essentially go through the parking, the circulation, and the loading, which is the same testimony that you heard through Mr. Strong. And I defer to you, Mr. Chair. There's no new topics that would be introduced. Do you feel that his testimony is required, or do you have an adequate?
I would bring him up, put his credentials on the record, and then we'll let the professionals, you know, if they have questions, they'll clarify, and then if the board has questions of Mr. Kennel, then
Perfect.
we'll take it that direction.
Thanks for the guidance. Mr. Kennel, if you could take a few minutes to share with us your professional credentials.
Yes, I'm a principal with McDonough and Ray Associates. I've over 35 years of traffic and transportation planning experience. I've appeared before this board on many occasions, as well as the planning board, and on over 1,000 applications in 100 municipalities. I've been qualified by New Jersey Superior Court on land use matters as a traffic expert, and I've prepared over 1,000 traffic impact and parking studies over my 35 years.
Education, just for the record.
My education is New Jersey Institute of Technology.
Thank you. We accept your credentials.
Thank you very much. So you heard Mr. Strong describe the parking facilities, the on-site circulation, the fire department's approval of the on-site circulation, the trash receptacle location and design. From your perspective as a traffic expert, are you comfortable with the categorization and description that Mr. Strong advanced before the board?
Yes, I am.
Adequate parking?
Adequate parking, and just to touch on that, our office submitted a report dated August 7th, 2018, that included parking observations after tax date, April 15, 2018. In the latter part of April and in May, and our peak parking was 24 vehicles on site. In anticipation of this meeting, I conducted additional observations today as well as a couple weeks ago, as the employee population has increased with the tax season upon us, and the maximum parked vehicles were 28 and 29 vehicles on those observations. So again, it substantiates the fact that there's this plan that provides 34 parking spaces will be more than adequate for the tenants in the building.
Mr. Chair, I have nothing further. Mr. Kennel.
Professionals.
Scott, what's the largest type vehicle expected to this site?
It would be an SU-30, that'd be a refuse vehicle or a box truck.
Okay, so no tractor trailers or anything like that?
That's not, my understanding is just box trucks, and we've designed the site to accommodate those
Ken
vehicles.
and the applicant would agree to a condition on that?
Absolutely. The site cannot accommodate an articulated vehicle.
That's all I have.
Board members, any questions, or Mr. Kennel? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then, again, with permission, I'll ask Ms. Coffin to join us, share with you her credentials, and we'll go right in.
Before she starts, we're going to take a 5-minute break, 10-minute break, please, if you don't mind.
The board will now reconvene.
Allison?
I'm scared.
Mr. Chairman, we're ready to proceed. The third and final professional witness is Allison Coffin, the professional planner. She has been sworn. I'm going to ask if she could take a few moments to once again share with the board her professional and educational background.
I'm a professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. I count the age of my license from the age of my son, because I got it right after he was born, so I know I've had my license for 15 years. In that time, I've been accepted as an expert witness in front of a great many of communities, but I have been in Howell previously, a lot.
Education.
Bachelor's degree from Boston College.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We accept your credentials.
Thank you. Allison, I'm going to ask if you could initially share with the board the nature of the preparation that you did to be prepared to testify this evening, and then if you could, in a narrative fashion, and I'm not going to interrupt you, just take us right through the proofs. Tell us what our obligations are, tell us what we need to present to this board to earn a D3 variance, and then if you could take us through the supporting building blocks that the experts already placed on the record and how they tie into your argument.
Sure. To prepare for tonight, I met with the applicant, the property owner. I reviewed the application materials, the board's professionals' reports. I looked at the zoning ordinance and the master plan. I visited the site, and I attempted a little research on my own to see what the history of this property is, and found that it is, in fact, dark and mysterious, and we have no idea what the approval history on this property was. But the applicant tonight is looking to modernize the site and provide a conforming site plan to a great extent, and continue the use of this building for multiple tenants. Now, the type of relief we're looking at is a D3 variance. The uses themselves are permitted in the SED district, but multi-tenanted structures in the SED zone are limited to buildings that have a gross floor area in excess of 40,000 square feet, and each individual tenant space should not be less than 5,000 square feet. So in this case, where the building itself is less than 40,000 square feet and the tenant spaces are less than 5,000 square feet, we need a D3 conditional use variance to have a multi-tenanted structure. It's my opinion that special reasons exist for the granting of the use variance, and that the site can support the use despite the deviation from the ordinance, and that's the standard that we look for when we're looking at a conditional use variance. The New Jersey Supreme Court, in the case of Coventry Square versus the Westwood Zoning Board of Adjustment, found that the standard of proof for special reasons for a variance from a conditional use should be relevant to the nature of the deviation from the ordinance. So in essence, the Supreme Court stated that conditional uses are those which are permitted in the zone, subject to the imposition of certain conditions. So the board should analyze the nature of the condition, the extent of the variance, and make a determination regarding the grant of the variance based on whether or not the site is still appropriate for the use despite the deviation from the ordinance requirements. In this case, we have a proposal where the condition that's not met for the multi-tenanted structure is the minimum building size and the minimum tenant space. In this instance, the individual tenant uses proposed are themselves permitted in the zone, so the issue that the board has to consider is whether or not the building can continue to function with multiple tenants despite being smaller than what the ordinance requires. It's my opinion that the variances would not impede the ability of the site to function with the use despite the deviation from the ordinance requirements. The site provides adequate parking for all of the tenants proposed for the building. The site provides available loading spaces to service those tenants. The site would not create a traffic detriment, and there is no other impact that I can conceive of that would result from the site having multiple tenant spaces, and with those spaces including tenant spaces less than 5,000 square feet. There's also some bulk variance relief that's being requested, and most of the variances can be granted under the C1 hardship standard as they relate to the lot's unique shape and pre-existing conditions on the lot, including the lot area. The lot is undersized. This is an existing condition. The side and front yard setbacks. The triangular shape of the lot, when combined with the required buffering and setbacks for this property, make it challenging to effectively use without some relief. And the setbacks as proposed are due to the existing conditions on the site, such as the location of the existing buildings, when coupled with the requirement for the buffering and the setbacks creates a hardship. There's a buffer depth variance to the northern residential zone that abuts the property, and the buffer along this line is an existing condition. The applicant is proposing to work with the board's professionals to provide some fencing to provide screening for the adjacent residents. In that way, the applicant's trying to meet the intent of the ordinance, provide buffering to the adjacent residents. And again, we have a lot with a triangular shape that forces the location of the building and the parking to be located closer to this lot line rather than farther away from the residents within the narrow portion of the lot at the triangular point of the intersection. For the buffer height, it's not possible to provide the required buffer height and the depth of land that's available for the buffer. Again, the applicant's trying to meet this intent by providing fencing and screening around the new K-turn location. We also have relief for the trash enclosure setback within the front yard, and again, this is the most logical location to put the trash enclosure, given that it's serviced by the existing driveways and parking facilities. And I think the other relief that we determined we needed tonight was the number of signs. And we have an existing sign that identifies the entire office park. The second sign in this case just makes sense because it'll identify this individual structure, which is not identified on the sign that currently exists on the site. It's my opinion that the variances advance the purposes of the municipal land use law by advancing Purpose G, providing sufficient space in an appropriate location for commercial use. There's no detriment to the variances as they are proposed. The setbacks and buffering are consistent with pre-existing conditions on the site. The net impact of the site plan is to improve this property by increasing the landscaping, improving the parking layout, and adding a trash enclosure. And the benefits of the variance, which include site improvements and the continued use and occupancy of this building, therefore outweigh the detriments. There's no substantial detriment, in my opinion, to the granting of the request variances as it relates to the master plan and the zoning ordinance. Though the building and tenant spaces are undersized for the ordinance, the types of uses that will be occupying these spaces are best located in the SED district, and it's consistent with the character and the purpose of this district, and there's no long-term detriment to the zone plan that's caused by approving smaller tenant spaces.
I was also, the farm buffer you're going to need relief for.
We have more than enough depth to provide adequate screening to the roadway in the front. We have vacant land and agriculture across the street, but there's no change to the current condition, and I think that would be acceptable to remain that way.
Okay. Also, please note that you've got the right-of-way of Lakewood Farmingdale Road that's also there. Jen?
I take no exception to the testimony as provided. The only thing that I would add, Allison, is that when you provide a 6-foot-high solid fence around where the trash enclosure is going to be, technically it's in the front yard and would need relief. I think that providing that solid fence, screening the trash enclosure is a better alternative to a 4-foot-high, 50% open where you could see everything. That's kind of counterintuitive at this point. So I would advocate for the granting of that relief as well.
Thank you.
Any questions of the board?
I just have one, I don't know, maybe I should have asked it earlier. The temporary soil stockpile on the drawing, temporary soil stockpile area, what is that?
Mr. Strong?
Temporary soil stockpile.
On the drawing.
That's a requirement of the Freehold Soil Conservation District. In order for them to certify a plan, when you're going to be moving dirt, you have to show them where you're going to stockpile the soil while you're doing the rest of the construction before you spread it back around or take it off the site. So that's what that temporary stockpile is for.
It's not there now. It's there to accommodate when they go on the site to do the work.
Construction.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Allison? Seeing none. Professionals, any further questions? Thank you, Allison. Mr. Pape?
That concludes the applicant's direct presentation, Mr. Chair. At the conclusion of the public portion, I'd ask for 60 seconds just to do a summation.
Okay. Any further from professionals? Nope. Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to open to public?
Make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Moretti, seconded by Mr. Roscoe. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Anyone in the audience wish to come forward and ask a question or make a comment, please feel free to come forward. Seeing none, can I have a motion to close?
Make that motion to close?
Motion by Mr. Moretti, seconded by Mr. O'Donnell. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none. Professionals? Okay. Mr. Pape?
Mr. Chair, this is a request for a D3 variance to permit up to 3 permitted uses to operate in a 10,000 square foot building. It's the size of the building that creates the issue, and I ask that the board take judicial notice that a 10,000 square foot building is a pretty substantial office building that can easily accommodate the 3 uses. The 3 uses would be confined to those which we placed on the record, and I've shared that marked up exhibit with Mr. Howard and I had prepared with your attorney, and we would agree to stipulate to those. Actually, it's an opportunity for this property to come forward and do 2 things: to spruce it up and bring it into closer conformance with all of the ordinances for both aesthetic and safety purposes, and to create a record of its existence, and so that the issue that our client recently experienced won't happen again. We respectfully ask that the board consider favorably the D3 variance and the preliminary and site plan with the variance and waiver really has been so completely described on the record by the professionals. Thank you.
Okay, any further from, okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion. This is an unusual case, being that we don't have any paperwork on it since 1986, and as my memory kind of comes back to me, I'm pretty sure this was all government property at one time, way back in the 70s when I lived here, because at the gate, we weren't allowed to get in. It was always like really private place. And that's probably why that was built, you know, the government must have built it, and there's no records on it. So it brings you into, you know, an unusual situation, and I feel that we should grant all relief needed, all variances, as agreed by both the applicant and the professionals and the zoning board, including your D3, your C1 handicap, your fence, your sign, trash container, 6-foot-high fence, and give you the 3 permitted uses that you need. So you have everything that you need, so you don't ever have to come back. And that's my motion.
Second.
Who's second? Okay,
Mr. Massa, second.
Mr. Massa. Okay, there was motion by Mr. O'Donnell, seconded by Mr. Massa. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Massa?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. San Clemente?
Yes.
Chairman Nansen?
I have to say, this is one of the first farmland buffer relief that I'm going to vote in favor of because of the circumstances that are there. So it's the very first.
Oh, we're going to celebrate.
Good luck, sir.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman.
Long
Good night, all.
time.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Strong? Who's going to leave the exhibits?
By the way, Mr. Strong, it's nice seeing you. You're
Same here,
looking
thank
good.
you.
I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a few years, hasn't it?
Yes, sir, it sure has.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I know. Absolutely. I totally agree.
Okay, have a nice time. See ya.
Jerry, quick question. What are you going to put on the, you have the arborvitae's around there. What are you going to recommend the additional screening?
Regular arborvitae, if all right, I would.
You have emerald greens around the dumpster, but I was just wondering, should
Yeah,
I-
I'm not gonna giant.
You're not putting any in the front.
Oh, you got it easy. Fairfield Industrial.
Yeah, we'll make sure they're
Yeah.
not deer candy.
Yeah. Okay. Next case on the agenda, BA 17-09A, Fairfield Industrial Park LLC. Amended use variance. Applicant of Fairfield Industrial Park LLC is applicant and owner seeking an amended use variance to allow for an indoor recreation fitness center in the recreational axe throwing facility on premises known as Block 168, Lot 8 and 8.02, 912 and 922 State Route 33. Expiration date, March 20th, 2019. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Paul Schneider, Giordano, Howard, and Cecil for the applicant. And just by way of introduction, some of you may remember we were here in late 2017, early 2018. This is the Fairfield Industrial Park, long existing facility on Route 33, acquired by my client shortly before we came in 2017. And tried to clean things up in terms of the paperwork. At that time, discovered that there were some missing COs, and for two of the COs for long existing tenants, we needed a variance, which the board was kind enough to grant. We're now here because we're looking to fill some space. There's some empty space for two uses in Building 9. This is a multi-building complex. One is 6,000 square feet in Building 9 for what's called Shore Ninja Academy, a fitness center type use oriented towards children. And we have here tonight Mr. Mike Purnell from the Shore Ninja Academy.
You want to bring your witnesses forward, and we'll just go ahead and swear everybody in?
Sure, why doesn't everyone come up? I do. Scott Kennel, Kennel, McDonough and Ray.
Andrew Janu, Beacon Planning and Consulting Services. Thank you.
Michael Parnell, Shore Ninja Academy.
Could you just spell your last name, please?
P-A-R-N-E-L-L.
Thank you.
Howard Klotzkin, Bury the Hatchet.
How do you spell your last name, please?
Klotzkin.
Thank you, sir.
And the other use is Mr. Klotzkin's use for Bury the Hatchet, which is an indoor recreation type facility for axe throwing for adults. It's akin to darts. You throw the axes towards a target, and this is oriented towards adults. So we're going to have Mr. Purnell and Mr. Klotzkin describe their operations. In response to a review letter from the board's engineer, we've submitted a parking analysis and made some proposals to restripe the parking lot, put in some additional sidewalking to facilitate pedestrian use, and we're certainly willing to do anything else that your engineer thinks is appropriate. And as requested by Ms. Beam, we of course have Mr. Jano here to provide planning testimony that proves as to why the variance is appropriate. So Mr. Parnell, can you come up?
Yes. Isn't there a handheld right there on the table? He didn't give it back.
That's definitely a speaker right there.
Thank you. Hopefully I don't have to start over.
No, you're good. There's a mic right in the center of the table.
That long black thing in front of
That's a mic.
Oh, okay. That is a mic. So, Mr. Purnell, could you briefly describe what Shore Ninja Academy is, the nature of your operations, the hours of your operations, et cetera?
Sure. So it's a fitness studio type concept, instructed classes for children as young as 6 up to adults, different age group classes, like probably about 12 and under, and then 12 to maybe 18, and then there's some adult classes. It's not a drop-in facility. It's a membership-based, instructed, specific class times.
How many members?
Typically, I would say the average class is about 9 kids. Some get up to like 12, depending times of the year. But typically around 9 or 10 kids is the typical class.
Per class?
Per class, yeah.
And then how many employees would be on the site at the same time?
2.
And what are the hours?
So weekdays, Monday to Friday, it's 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Saturdays is a pretty full day, 9 to 6, and Sundays 11 to 7. The weekends, we have some group classes that could get up to 12 to 15 kids in them, as well as the regular classes.
And are the classes...
Can you repeat those hours of operation again?
Sure. 4 to 9, Monday to Friday.
That's 4
p.m.
4 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Sorry.
Okay.
And then Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's the range. It's not every single hour. And then 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Sundays.
Do you host any competition type things at your facility?
It would just be the group classes.
So you don't host other...
It wouldn't be like multiple gyms or anything like that, no.
So just those that are in your class, and you
Yeah.
said, what, like 9 to 10 kids at a time?
Yeah, well, the groups could get up to maybe 15. And those would only be on Sundays.
What's the typical duration of a class, and is there any gap in between the classes?
Yeah, it's about a 45 to 50-minute class. There's like a 5-minute, they start on the hour, it's about a 5-minute kind of check-in period, and then about 5 after to 10 of is the class period, and then they all file out and we wait for the next group to come in.
Like 10 to 15 minutes of float in the middle there?
Yeah.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Regional competitions are held at a larger facility?
Yeah, there's like kind of leagues now. They go up to, there's like a national competition up in Connecticut. They travel to some of the bigger facilities out in like the Cherry Hill area and Philadelphia area.
Thank you.
There's
Thank you,
some
Mr.
big
Thank you,
ones.
sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, I have one. Now, do the parents stay and watch, or they just usually,
Typically not drop off.
Okay.
They typically sit there and watch, like there's like an area that they sit. My partner has a gym down in Toms River, and then we're partners on this one.
Okay.
So yeah.
that's all I have.
What is the youngest?
Youngest age group?
Yeah.
Typically like 6, because anything younger than that, they're not really strong enough to do this stuff.
So you're saying that a 6-year-old kid's parent is dropping them off and not staying?
No, they all stay. Typically,
stay.
they all stay. Yeah.
Okay.
And there'll be a facility to facilitate the parents, correct?
Yeah, there's like kind of like a bullpen area where they sit and watch.
And is there a top end age cap, 16?
It goes to adults. There's some adult
Oh,
classes
really?
too. Yeah.
Okay.
The adults are like late at night, like 8 o'clock class. They're the last ones of the day.
And that would be during the week, correct?
Yeah.
Not on the weekends?
The adults, no.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I have a question. Yeah, with your hours from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock, Are you open to the public? So like if I want to go there and throw the hatchet?
Oh, no, the hatchet's a separate,
That's the next witness.
Yeah,
This is
this is
just
just
for
the
the
fitness.
Shore Ninja Academy.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
You can go practice your ninja there, Tom. Your stealthness.
you can warm up at our place and then go next door.
Okay, sir.
Anything else from Mr. Parnell?
Professionals, anything else from Mr. Purnell? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And we'll have Mr. Klotzkin.
Okay, now, real quick, now, will they be sharing the building?
Well, it's separate spaces in the building.
Okay,
They
so
won't be-
it's
they won't
two
be-
different spaces?
Two different spaces.
Okay, they're totally separate?
Totally separate.
Okay.
Totally separate.
No, I was just wondering if it's basically two tenants, correct?
Yes, 2 units in this
Two
building.
units, okay.
It's 6,000 square feet for Shore Ninja
You don't need to be a ninja to throw the axe.
and 6,350 for, we're proposing for Bury the Hatchet.
Okay, so 12,000 some odd square feet for
Yes.
both? Okay.
And please describe Bury the Hatchet, again, focusing on your
Sure.
operations, hours, number of visitors, et cetera.
So we are we have 11 other locations locally, and we are, it's indoor axe throwing. Groups of up to 8 people work together and learn with an axe master who's with you from the time you walk into the building until the time that you leave, coaches you how to throw axes, helps keep score, and teaches you everything that you need to know in order to be able to throw axes accurately. We're open 7 days a week. Our busiest times are Friday night and Saturdays. We require reservations. The customers are there for 2 hours, and we have 20 minutes in between sessions till the next group of pre-planned customers are able to play.
Now, is this membership or anyone
It's
can
not.
walk?
It's a pay-per-visit for a 2-hour session.
Okay. And what's the hours of operation?
So we're open 7 days a week. We're open from 3 to 9 on
3 p.m.
3 p.m. till 9 p.m.
to 9 p.m., and that's Monday
Monday,
through...
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Okay.
Fridays, we're open till 11. And Saturdays, we're open till 11,
From 3 till 11, or
from noon till 11.
noon to 11?
Correct.
Friday also?
Friday's 3 o'clock.
Friday's 3 to
Oh, yep, 11,
3 to 11 on Friday.
correct.
And then
noon?
Yes,
noon to 11,
correct.
and then Sunday.
And Sundays, we're like noon to 9. We also occasionally have people outside of our primary target hours. We cater to a lot of larger companies who do company events and such. And so if somebody wanted to come at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, we will open and accommodate them.
Usually, how many people are...
So on a corporate event, it's 20 to 40 people. On any of our normal scheduling, it's a 2-person minimum, an 8-person maximum per lane.
in?
And how many lanes, sir?
We have 7 lanes, so that maximum occupancy count would be 56 people.
Okay, now, how did they get there? Either individuals driving cars, or...
They come in groups typically driving cars, but normally they don't come by themselves, but occasionally they do. We find that in previous studies, we found that there's an average of 3 people per vehicle.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How far do they throw the hatchets?
So the lanes are 12 foot wide by 16 feet long, and
I'm sorry.
16 feet, but you typically throw from about between 12 and 16 feet up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you need any special equipment, helmets or anything like that when you're throwing?
No
Shoes?
helmets, shoes, closed-toed shoes are required, and, we have special axes and tomahawks that the people throw. Fortunately, we've never had an incident of anything worse than a splinter in any of our locations.
And nobody comes to throw knives, just hatchets?
We don't allow it.
You don't allow it?
We don't allow knives or Chinese stars or any of the other
Right,
throwing
right.
mechanisms.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Klotzkin, so at any given point over here, sorry, at any given point in time for like a 2-hour session, what's the maximum number of clients and employees on the site at a given
So
time?
it would be 56 customers.
Okay,
7 lanes, 8 people per lane.
okay,
1 axe master per lane, which would be 8,
okay.
and a receptionist and a manager. So the most that there would be at any one time would be 66 people.
66 people?
Yep.
And that's typically just on the peak weekends? How is it during most of the hours during the week from like 5 to 9 p.m.?
Much less than that,
Okay,
unfortunately.
okay. Now,
Are these lanes separated by a wall?
They are. They're separated by a fencing, a metal fence that runs, 12 foot tall and 16 feet off of the wall. They're divided lanes. If you picture a batting cage,
Yep, I
that's the
got
best way to picture it.
So when the throwing pieces are not in use,
Yep.
are they securely stored away?
Absolutely.
So the kids can't walk in there and grab their hands and start throwing them and?
No, so we only, in each lane, it's a double lane, so 2 people throw at the same time, and an axe master's with them the entire time. We have several different size axes that people throw. 2 people throw at a time, we only allow 2 axes out at a time. If at any point the axe master has to go away, there's an emergency, they take the axes, they have a locked cubby that's 4 feet behind them, and they place the axes back in there, shut the door, and do what they have to do. And the axes are always in the locked up situation, except when the axe master is in the lane.
And Mr. Klotzkin, just to be clear, what are the age groups of your customers?
So on weekdays, we allow 14 and older. On weekends, we require 21 and older.
And 14 and old, like, they would have to be accompanied by an adult, correct?
They have to be accommodated by an adult, and then they have to sign a waiver, and
Everyone has to sign a waiver, though.
everybody has to sign a waiver.
so when you say weekends for the adults, is that inclusive of Friday?
Friday and Saturday.
Okay, and Sunday?
No, just Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
And where else in New Jersey do you have locations, sir?
So we currently have Cherry Hill, Toms River, Bloomfield, Old Bridge, Paramus, and Princeton opens this week.
I got a question for you. It seems to be a rave going on, with this, and it's real popular.
Yes.
As people come, and get good at it, do you have like contests or tournaments planned?
We do. So
You do.
we run weekly leagues similar to bowling.
Oh, so you have a league?
Yep, we
Okay.
have a league. We're a member of Waddle, which is World Axe Throwing League. We have people go up to Canada to compete against other people worldwide next week. So we send one person from each one of our locations up to this event. In the last event, which was just 3 months ago, we took 4 of the top 6 spots in the world.
How do you put your leagues together? Do people form their own league, or you join them together?
We join them together.
And then how many people will you have like at one time in competition?
So again, we would never exceed our maximum occupancy our occupancy for the building will be much higher than what we will allow in the building. We're saying that we'd have a 66-person maximum.
66.
But the occupancy count, based on our use group, is about 100, maybe above.
Okay. And do you have bathrooms in your facility, or do you got to go someplace to go for the
No,
girls?
we have ADA-compliant bathrooms that are proposed to be built in our facility.
And he'll have his own bathrooms, or you're going to?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Do you have, when you hold these regional events, are they going to be held at this place?
No.
Where
So
would they be held?
when we have a really big event, in Paramus, we have our largest facility. It's 13,000 square feet. It's more than double the size of the current facility that we're renting here. As well as in Philadelphia, we have larger facilities. We would do it in one of our larger places.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll ask the same question I asked before. With the 14-year-olds coming, is there going to be a waiting area for the parents if they want to watch, or?
So we typically don't allow 14-year-olds to throw without their parents.
Okay.
We do have a very nice formal lobby with leather couches and
Okay,
very rustic
but
looking.
that would add to the maximum, maybe 66 occasionally.
Correct. But we don't have people, we don't allow participants to go, We don't allow spectators, no spectators,
Okay.
0. So if somebody's coming in with their 14-year-old, they're going to be throwing with them or standing as part of the group in the lane.
Okay.
So there's no like bullpen where people can just watch?
No, there is places for people to watch, but we discourage it.
So could you have, you said there's a capacity of 100, is it feasible that you could have 100 people in that building
No,
with
because
spectators?
we don't, again, we don't allow spectators. Because we just don't allow it.
Do you have like tables?
We do.
With, so if I'm understanding this correctly, you have the fencing and you're gonna have 2 bullseyes in each lane,
Correct.
correct?
Yep.
And then there'll be like a table behind some kind of like barrier where people can sit. So like if my 14-year-old was throwing,
Yep.
I could sit at that table in that lane to watch.
We make it a very comfortable setting. We have a lot of parties and things like that. So essentially, there's the 2 alleys, the 2 lanes. Then we have a cubby, which is like a divider. And then we have a picnic table, a very nice wooden picnic table, comfortable seating around it for people to sit and watch, and while they're waiting their turns. Because basically, 2 people get up at a time. They throw for 2 or 3 minutes. But if you're there with a group of 8, if it's about 12 minutes before it's your turn again, and you're sitting and watching. Each one of our lanes also, and not that it's relevant, we have 2 TVs in each lane, one which is for like sports and entertainment, and the other is for digital scoring.
So what you're saying, at any given time during a 2-hour period, you could have 66 people there?
Correct.
You said 7 lanes?
7 lanes, 8 people per lane, plus an axe master, plus a receptionist, plus a manager.
66 people.
Yes.
Okay.
So is there gonna be enough parking for all this?
Well, we have Mr. Kennel to address parking. Yes, we're convinced there's enough parking. If there's no other questions,
Any question from the professionals? Board? Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Kennel, could you come up, please?
No, there's a lot of parking. Yeah, you gotta start counting around the whole building.
An easel, so we're going to use that.
Mr. Kennel, could you put your qualifications on the record again briefly?
Yes. Scott Kennel, McDonough and Ray Associates. As I stated earlier, I'm principal with McDonough and Ray Associates with over 35 years of traffic and transportation planning experience, including parking studies, and having testified on over 1,000 applications in 100 municipalities.
We accept your credentials, sir.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kennel, you've seen the review letter issued by board's engineer on November 13, 2018, correct?
Yes, I have.
And subsequent to that, you prepared a parking analysis?
Yes, I have.
And you've seen the review letter, revised review letter dated February 6, 2019?
Yes.
So why don't you describe what you've done and what you're proposing and what your analysis is?
Right. Before I do that, I'd like to introduce one exhibit here, which is an aerial.
Mark that as A12, or secretary will come down and do that. You want to put a description on the record, please?
It's really just a reference. It was prepared by Beacon Planning and Consulting, and its references Fairfield Industrial Park, and it's an aerial of the industrial park itself. A12.
Thank God.
And before I discuss the parking study that was submitted, I just want to orient the board and the professionals to the site and the specific building that both tenants will occupy.
Point of information. Can we put that up on the?
I don't think we have a,
I don't have it electronically.
we don't have it.
No.
There you go.
That's just that one, that's just the building. though,
That's
not the
just
whole-
the one building.
I apologize. I mean, I can bring this up a little bit closer.
Yeah, that'll work.
Bring it up a little closer to the...
Or either pass it down the board and let them look at it, Mr. Kennel.
But I just wanted to orient. Sure.
Yeah, we'll just pass that down.
Which building are we talking about?
The one with the yellow on it, yes. That's building number 9, which I'll reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was briefly up there. There it is. No?
Wow, what magic. There it is, thank you.
Yes.
All right, anybody else want to
Again, the representation that's on the screen is consistent with the aerial that I'm holding, which we reference as A12. And I just wanted to qualify, along the bottom of the aerial is Route 33, and then to the right is Howell Road. And the building that is, the nature of the application has the yellow star on it. And for the board's benefit, Ninja will occupy, basically it's the eastern part, I guess the northeast part of the building, approximately 6,000 square feet. And then Barry the Hatchet will be on the westerly side and occupy approximately 6,300 square feet. Each tenant will have their own access to their space. Barry the Hatchet will access via an existing doorway that exists now on the west side of the building. And then the Ninja facility will have a new door, man door, that will be added to the easterly side of the building. So I just wanted to orient the board when I discuss the parking study. Again, the parking study that was submitted is dated January 30, 2019. And in summary, it talks about the parking studies that were conducted in November, and then more recently in December and January, parking accumulation studies were conducted on site. This site is approximately 60% occupied, or about 100,000 square feet of building area is leased out. During the time I conducted at least the counts in December and January. And our accumulation showed that a maximum parking accumulation was 170 vehicles, and there's 460 spaces on the site. And that doesn't include the loading docks and other loading zones, but there's 460 parking spaces serving the entire park, which consists of 9 buildings and about 168,000 square feet. Then there were specific parking counts conducted for Building 9, where both tenants or uses are proposed. The peak parking for Building 9 is approximately 35 spaces, and that's during the middle of the day, generally between 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then by 5 p.m., there are approximately 10 vehicles parked for Building number 9. There are in excess of 100 parking spaces adjacent to Building number 9 that are within 200 feet of the building. You had heard the testimony of the two prior witnesses as far as Shore Ninja Academy. Generally, the classes are going to be 9 to 11 participants. There may be larger groups on the weekends, but on the weekends, the parking demand in the park are very low for the other traditional Monday to Friday tenants. As far as Bury the Hatchet, again, the testimony was that their peak times when you would have all lanes fully occupied with the maximum employees would be Friday and Saturday nights. Again, when the other users are basically closed within the park. There is Shore Ninja that has activities on Friday night, but they're basically winding down as the Bury the Hatchet is ramping up. So from a parking standpoint, if I look at it on an overall basis, there's more than adequate parking to accommodate this use, but then I also then considered parking proximate to building number 9, and if there's other competing uses that would need parking. And again, based on our observations, by 5 o'clock, there were 10 parked vehicles. That leaves in excess of 90 to 100 parking spaces to accommodate the two uses. So on that basis, it's my opinion that there's more than adequate parking. I've conducted a lot of the parking observations myself. I did recommend in the parking study some modifications to the site, which are minor in nature. One would on the east side of the building where the Shore Ninja has, they're going to occupy the space. Right now, there's angled parking with short dead-end aisles. My recommendation is restripe that to provide head-on parking. It's more conventional for a turnover type of use, which the Shore Ninja would be, rather than a lower turnover of an industrial use or office use. They're also I'm also suggesting that a handicap parking space be provided outside that would accommodate Shore Ninja. And then also and I guess there's the graphic that was submitted, suggesting to the south side of the building, adjacent to the nursery, there are a number of parking spaces. It suggested that you add a sidewalk connecting to those parking spaces to just add more access for Shore Ninja.
Can we address these two real quick?
Sure.
Number one, to add that sidewalk and proposed crossing there, you still, in order for people to park and get to that crossing area, they're going to have to walk in the road aisle, correct? Because there's no sidewalk in that island.
What are we referring to?
I think he's talking about the parking area between building 5 and 9 on the western side.
Right.
Right now, there's 3 individual sidewalks that just go to the driveway aisle. I think it would be beneficial for the applicant to take those out so you can consolidate all the walks to one consistent point, maybe putting a continuous sidewalk along the curb line there, the western edge, tying into that new sidewalk that you're talking about there, going into the building, crossing the aisle there.
And the applicant would be happy to do that.
Now, Scott, a couple of questions that I have.
Sure.
So you said after the peak hour, so after 5 p.m., you have an excess of 100 spaces around Building 9?
That's correct.
So you're saying you have 110 parking spaces around Building 9, because you said there's 10 parkings?
Within 200 feet of the building, correct.
Okay. Now, can you just designate specifically which areas you're counting for that?
Yes. I don't have a pointer, but, well, I guess we can go back to the aerial. And on the top part of the aerial, there are, and I have the exact numbers. 1 second. On the side of the building closest to Howell Road, there are 40 parking spaces, actually 42 parking spaces when you include the 2 handicap that are on the main drive aisle. On the south side of the building, which is, borders up to the nursery, there are 11 parking spaces right adjacent to the building, and then 12 parking spaces closest to the property line.
It
This,
would be really helpful if you put your exhibit up and show us exactly what you're talking about, because I am not following.
all right. Then if we go back to A12, again, this would be,
Can you grab the mic, the handheld mic?
Scott, it might be beneficial. I think you guys provided a plan which kind of showed the sidewalk and stuff. That might be a little bit more easier for the board to follow.
Is that something you can put up?
that was the architectural.
That's not something you prepared?
Well, there's a red line sketch on the aerial I did. But
Okay.
I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
No, there was an
Architectural
architect
that
put
I-
together.
That I submitted,
I have one right here.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
we don't
not
have
on the desk?
No, can you just show up today?
No, it showed up last week, because,
Yeah, but what they have up here is from when the agenda goes
Okay.
out.
okay.
Oh, so we don't have that?
No.
Okay.
Unless-
All right, then proceed, I guess, with the arrow then.
All
Sorry
right,
about
all
that.
right. Again, I think they want me to use. Going back to A12, the parking field to the west, that's closest to Howell Road, there are 42 parking spaces in this area. To the south of the building, as I stated, there are 11 parking spaces adjacent to the building, and then 12 parking spaces on the other side of the aisle. There is a parking lot that is between north of Building 9 and south of Building 5 that provide approximately 35 parking spaces. And then on the east side of the building, the sketch that was submitted identified 16 parking spaces. So that's, again, that's how we came up with the number of in excess of 100 parking spaces.
Okay, so you're proposing to use parking spaces on the west side of the building. How exactly are pedestrians going to get over to the Short Ninja and the Bury the Hatchet? Are they going to be walking down driveway aisles? Is there any internal means of the building to get to those areas?
It's intended that the parking spaces on the west side closest to Howell Road would be oriented towards Bury the Hatchet, as well as the ones on the south side of the building. So that provides you almost 60 parking spaces. And again, not everybody that goes to the Bury the Hatchet are driving. Generally, it's 2 or 3, if not more, people per vehicle. So you're looking at anywhere from 30 to 35 vehicles when they're at maximum capacity for Bury the Hatchet. I mean, that could be accommodated just within that parking area west of the building and behind the church building there that's on Howell Road.
I'm just a little concerned with the proximity to the proposed use. You know, you are going to have young children, granted they're going to be shepherded with adults, walking down driveway aisles to get there. It is an industrial park. You know, Building 8 to the, I guess it's the southwest or, no, the south of this has a lot of what appears to be semi-truck trailer, box trucks, traffic, and that driveway coming in off Route 33, I think that's the main driveway that comes across that proposed crosswalk and stuff like that. I think that's something that the board would be concerned with, you know, not having any designated walkways. If you're going to be using that parking area and you don't have any means internal to the building, we don't want people walking on the driveway aisle. We don't want people walking on the grass area to get to the site.
Well, again, as was identified in the sketch that was submitted, there'll be a crosswalk across that main aisle between building design, and we can post signage.
Yeah, but that's that's the parking area between Building 5 and 9. You're saying you're using the area west and south, and I
Correct.
don't see any type of sidewalk or anything connecting that to where the proposed
We
use
can
is.
add a crosswalk there too. I identified a sidewalk connection that would bring you down to that drive aisle.
I don't see it on the plan.
It's
So we're talking about the parking area between the Building 9 and the church, so the west, right? We're talking the same thing?
Well, that's a self-contained parking field of 42 parking spaces.
Yeah, so if you're gonna be using that for parking, how are they getting down to the Ninja?
Well, I wouldn't expect people going to Ninja are going to be going to the other side of the building. Again, it's a lower intense use.
Okay.
They're going to be geared towards the east side of the building, where I suggested the 90-degree parking in lieu of what's out there today with the dead-end angle parking. And they also have access to the parking spaces adjacent to the nursery or the field that has 35 parking spaces to the north. I wouldn't expect any of the Shore Ninja attendees to park on the west side towards Howell Road. There's no reason for them. There's more than adequate parking on the on the east side of the building.
Okay, so really you're saying you're counting on the south side, the east side, and the north side, I guess it is.
And that's more than adequate parking.
So by what you're telling me, that's 74 spaces? So,
which is excess of what I would expect this Shore Ninja.
so you say you got 10 cars overnight, you have a possibility of 66 total employees and clients for the hatchet throwing, and then on the weekends up to 15 to 17 for the Ninja Shore. So that's,
But they would, when the Ninja has as many as 17 attendees, it wouldn't be at the same peak as the Bury the Hatchet.
How can you say that? That was a point of your testimony that I have an issue with. So, listening to the testimony, the Shore Ninja is open Monday through Friday, 4 to 9. The Hatchet is 3 to 11. It's the same time period.
But the Bury the Hatchet peaks with the full occupancy is after 7 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays.
Right, and the Shore Ninja is open till 9.
Till 9.
On Friday, and it's open till 6 on Saturday, and I would take exception to the fact that it's just nighttime hours that the Hatchet Place is going to be busy. My guess is it's going to be busy during Saturday afternoon into the evening. So I don't 100% agree with you that they're not coincident peaks. I think they are coincident peaks, and I agree with Charlie. I think that you need some more pedestrian, when this industrial park was built, it wasn't intended for these types of uses, so I get that. And I have no problem with the uses that are being proposed at all. I just think that you need to do a little bit better job on the pedestrian circulation in the parking lot, because you have a different type of user now that's coming to this site. They're not using these buildings as warehousing, industrial type buildings. This is now a recreational type use. They're not gonna have the same awareness as someone coming to work that comes in there. I mean, so I think you're really just asking for some more pedestrian
Yeah.
circulation.
the hours of
We'd
arrival are
be
certainly
more than
different, too.
happy to do whatever it takes to satisfy the board's professionals in terms of sidewalks, in terms of consolidating
I
crosswalks,
just
and
think there's a
turning
couple
speed
crosswalks
bumps.
and things like that
Sure.
that need to be included,
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah,
we'd
and
be
then
more than happy
possibly-
to do whatever the board's professionals.
Possibly some major sidewalks, because, there's a lot of grass areas adjacent to the building, in between the parking lots and that, is to put a directive, to where it directs people to walk.
What's the number of this
The applicant's happy to do that. I believe
Okay.
we can satisfy
And
the
then I had
board's
another question.
professionals.
What is the other tenant in this building?
Building 9, yeah.
What are the other tenants in there?
Good question. I know we've submitted a list of tenants. It's,
Right.
one of the exhibits.
In building.
No,
Yeah.
different building.
It's A4. Is that something that we could see?
Can you put that on there?
My question was, what is the tenants in Building 9?
I would like
Yeah.
to.
Is there-
That's what we're going to provide you.
Right.
Use this,
It's one of the exhibits.
you know what I mean, so that you're really kind of
Just so I can.
separating them and keep them here,
Parking lot
to go into here, as
talking
opposed
about
to
for the
this,
hatchet throwing?
yeah.
No, that is the parking lot for Shore Ninja.
Be bumped
Where's
up.
the parking lot?
Up to the, right, that whole part, that's 42 parking spaces.
Thank you.
Right, but then,
You're welcome.
you're not really, what else is in
Thank you,
here
Mr.
is the
Chairman.
question.
Guess we don't have A4?
Oh, there it is.
What are we in, building?
Building 9. So you have Fast Track Door Manufacturing and Woodland, or Wood Hut. So they're
warehouse office uses.
And what are their?
Okay, so all total, if this application's look favored, there's 3 tenants in this building?
No, it'll be 4 tenants. There's 2 existing tenants and 2 proposed tenants.
Okay. What's the other,
It was called Wood Hut.
Wood Hut?
You're right, which is,
This is
my understanding, like an assembly woodworking shop. And then the other one was, I think, garage doors.
Okay.
So Scott, of
Where
the
are they?
30 to 40 during the midday, are you able to attribute a certain percentage of that to the other uses in building number 9, or is
That's
it?
just based on my observation. I didn't.
Okay,
I
so
didn't
you can't
inventory.
say that's just for the other uses in 9? I mean,
It appears to be. I mean, I've been out there quite often, and, you know, the parking is oriented towards the specific buildings and those users, because all the different parking areas and buildings have sufficient parking adjacent to them.
So I think one of the other concerns that the board has is, you know, saying we're going to utilize certain parking areas, and those parking areas being used for overnight storage of other vehicles for businesses, and, you know, they're stored over the weekend, and you're counting on it for these proposed uses, which are at their peaks over the weekend. You know, just from me visiting the site today, in that lot between building 5 and 9, there's like at least 5 or 6 Utiliquest
And-
cars that are permanently parked there.
And
it looks
I've
like.
been advised that they can relocate those to other portions of the site, because I asked that specific question today of the landlord. So that whole parking lot can be freed up, and those vehicles can be parked there.
No, it's this here.
I would just request that in this area around Building 9, that there would be no overnight parking.
Yeah,
That's fine.
the only overnight parking that exists, and it's east of it, and you can see some of the larger vehicles where the tree line is, just to the east of the building.
Yes, sir.
And they're associated with vehicles with the nursery, but I didn't count those parking spaces in the available parking for the 2 uses I've spoken of. They're not included in the 100 parking spaces.
No, I do, I understand that,
Okay.
but they're commercial vehicles.
Right, but those
And-
commercial vehicles were not included in the inventory of 100 parking spaces. And my understanding is those are designated parking spaces for Landex Nursery.
Now,
Can they be relocated to a different area? We're looking at a lot of pedestrian
Right.
people coming in and out for this operation.
Yeah,
And
My understanding is those Landex parking spaces are 30 to 40 feet in length to accommodate the oversized vehicles. So that's basically the only place on site where they have those parking stalls, while still providing a drive aisle that is at least 30 feet through there.
We're certainly willing to prohibit overnight parking in the vicinity of Building 9,
Okay.
where we're talking about having the parking for Shore Ninja and Bury the Hatchet. No problem there.
is there any way we could cord this off from the commercial vehicles?
it gets kind of tough too if there's any access agreements or easements in place for that. It gets tough to cut it off. I don't know if there are, if you're the applicant or the owner's aware of any.
All I know from leases, you know, there's a certain number of spaces they need to provide for each tenant, but and I'm sure there's other provisions for where they park vehicles.
Now, does the owner have any idea on the hours of when they're parked there? Is it like typical Monday through Friday from like 8 to 5? And they're not coming in and out on the weekends, or what's the situation with that?
We're talking specifically about what, sir?
So the Landex parking that you're using to the east of the building?
Yeah, I mean, that's, again,
Because, I mean, that's another concern too, is having the commercial truck traffic coming in and out of there on the weekends if kids are going to be walking to the building.
Could I add to that too? Because I do go to Landex, and I know Saturday and Sunday they do a lot of retail, and they're very busy, and those trucks, I know exactly where they are, and they're going to be an issue if you're going to have, you know, close enough where, you know, you're letting kids off. So I think we need to address that, because that's the only, you know, that's a major concern.
well, the children are accompanied by their parents. I mean, again, we're providing parking spaces right adjacent to the building.
Scott, is there any way, and I'm not 100% sure that there is, behind the building, between the building and where the nursery is, right?
Right?
Is there any way to put some kind of like like speed bump, which I'm not a huge fan of in general, but something that would discourage any visitor or any vehicle that's not there for that particular building from using that area. You know what I'm saying? So you would force them out onto the main drive in the middle of the site as opposed to going behind your building, which is gonna have a different user than some of these other buildings. You know, and I threw the speed bump out as just a general example, but just something along the rear of that building that would very much discourage a vehicle that wasn't going to that building from using that driveway versus the other driveways. You know what I'm saying?
And maybe there is something we can say, it's, you know, no through traffic or truck, we can put a sign for trucks to direct them around.
What about a barrier?
Well, I don't think you want to put a barrier, I mean, just for emergency purposes and everything else, you still want free movement, but just internal guide signage that would direct them, as Jennifer is saying, to the more defined primary aisles.
But my whole issue is trucks coming in and out while parents are using this parking lot back here. That's my whole concern. They're gonna use that drive aisle.
Oh, I understand. And again, that drive aisle there exceeds your normal drive aisle width. There's good sight lines in there. And again, because of their short aisles, it's not as if there's, people are gonna be at high speeds because they just don't have, the length of the aisle just doesn't allow that to happen.
What's the largest size trucks that's parked there?
Right, for the Landex parking, it's got to be 30 to 40-foot trucks that are.
Tractor trailers.
Well, not tractor trailers, are longer box trucks associated with the you know,
Looks like a tractor.
the transport of nursery.
Yeah, because they're getting deliveries, that's a good point.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I know Landex brings in a lot of, you know, nursery stock, and it's not coming in a little truck. Now, I'm
Understood.
not saying it's going to be during the weekend when you're going to have a lot of the kids around, but it's still an issue. So I think we need to really see how we can, you know, take care of this.
I hear your concerns. I mean, we can develop a plan and then also then meet with Charlie and present that to him, and we can kind of try to work through this, and then
Those parking spaces are about 50 feet away from the diagonal parking spaces currently. And once you restripe that area and have the head-on parking, you're gonna add probably another 20 so feet. So you're talking, those parking spaces up against the building are gonna be 70 feet, plus or minus, away from those trucks. I do wanna just state for the record that in today's day and age, every industrial park that I've ever worked in has indoor recreation as a user in one or multiple buildings. In many instances, actually sharing buildings with warehouse distribution facilities. It is a very common adaptive reuse of this type of building. Hint, hint, Mr. Janu. But I would just say that if there's just, maybe the signage would work, but I do think that the way that the parking is laid out for that particular building, the area where those trucks are, and I'm looking at the aerial, I would venture to guess, we're just kind of speculating, that there seems to be an opening in the landscaping to the nursery.
correct, there is.
And that they're not traversing through this entire industrial park, they're cutting through the site. You can see it right there. So if there's any kind of way, even to just, without it being a physical barrier, but a visual barrier, to just encourage the trucks to their ingress and egress to be away from the building, I think that would be a better alternative, but I don't necessarily think there's going to be as many conflicts as we're discussing.
Okay.
And we'd certainly be pleased to submit a comprehensive vehicle and pedestrian circulation plan and striping plan, engineered, fully engineered into scale, and to meet all of the requirements of both of your professionals.
I think that'd be fine.
Okay.
I've seen where they've done things on the street.
truck ladies. Okay. Okay,
Anything else from Mr. Kennel?
I,
I just have one more question. So, in the head-on parking spaces, it looks like on the southeast or southwest corner, there's like a loading dock that comes out there. Is that gonna be removed? Is that staying in place?
I posed that question to the applicant today, and it's just understand that there's very little use of that, but if there is, then we could remove 2 parking spaces in that area so they can remain access, because I think
Yeah.
that goes to the manufacturing.
Yeah, if that's gonna
Through
stay,
the garage door tenant.
yeah, if that's gonna stay in there, I would like to see those spaces striped, so you're not having people parking in there and having an issue.
Understood.
not only that, that's pretty close to where the handicap is going in, correct?
Well, we have,
You got like 5 or 6 spaces.
we got 5 or 6 spaces from that.
And also,
Yeah, so,
Charles, the pitch,
yeah, so I was out there earlier today. The building does sit a bit higher than, the driveway aisles. Have you looked at that for ADA compliance, making sure that the slopes are gonna work out for you there?
I've suggested that to the applicant to have his engineer look at that
We'd be glad to do that as a
and
condition.
provide proofs on that.
So I will note, you can't exceed 2% for any of the parking spaces or the driveway, the aisle for the, getting out to the site.
the only other thing is the suggestion of moving the handicap all the way down.
Well, where's the door? It should be closest to
The door is generally midpoint of the building.
Why you put the handicap where you did.
That's
right?
correct, and where I show the proposed sidewalk.
So, and
Correct.
then, so you're expecting, how many spaces would you say you're using for this use? For these 2 uses? 75, 50?
A maximum of 75.
Okay, so
And I think that's still on the high side because of 2 or 3 people per vehicle, especially for Barry to Hatchet.
So,
So, I mean, that's beyond, I mean, generally, peak would be 50 is my opinion, a max of 75.
So if we're saying a max is 75, can we provide, I think it's 3 handicap spaces for 75, or,
Well, there are, just so you know.
Okay. But you,
On the Barry to Hatchet side,
okay,
there are 2 handicap parking spaces.
yeah, but how do they get into the building on the?
There's they access the building from the west side.
And they can get internal over to Barry to Hatchet?
Directly connect to the Barry to Hatchet.
Okay, all right, then,
If you look at the area that's up there on the top part of it, there's a little cutout.
okay.
Those
Yes,
are 2 handicap
So
parking.
internal to the building, they can get over to Barry to Hatchet?
That's where Barry to Hatchet access is, right there.
Okay, all right,
So there's 2 separate access points for the Barry to Hatchet and Short Ninja.
fair enough.
Question?
So right now, there's 2 tenants in the building.
Their building's approximately 25,000 square feet. Half of it is vacant right now, and the other half has 2 tenants.
So with these 2 potential tenants coming in, it's totally
The
filled?
building will be fully occupied, correct?
That building, yes.
Okay. And any of the surrounding buildings, are they all filled?
There is, as I stated, there's approximately 38% vacancy within the entire complex, which is about 165,000 square feet. It is identified in that Exhibit A4 where the other vacancies are. As I recall, they're far removed from this building. There are other buildings that are closer to 33. So they wouldn't be in competing for the parking spaces that I've identified available for the 2 tenants for Building 9. They would not be.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one quick one. The proposed crossing on the north side, you have it striped, which is there, do we need to have a pedestrian sign?
Yeah, they're gonna do.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think along with the striping plan, there would be some signage involved, maybe some
Okay.
crosswalk ahead, and maybe even some additional pavement striping saying crosswalk
Y'all are
ahead.
gonna work that out.
We're going to work
Yep.
that out on an overall circulation and signage plan for the tire industrial park, and that'll be one of the things we'll identify.
No other question? want to,
If there's other questions for Mr. Kennel, then we'll have Mr. Janu, please.
if y'all don't mind staying a little bit longer here.
Mr. Janu, you've been sworn. Could you please give the board the benefit of your credentials?
Good evening. My name is Andrew Janu. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, as well as a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I have been practicing, and I've been a principal in the firm of Beacon Planning and Consulting Services since approximately 1997. I'm currently serving as the planner for the borough in Carteret, the redevelopment advisor for South Amboy, redevelopment consultant for the city of Wildwood. I've appeared before this board and boards throughout the state of New Jersey throughout my career. For purposes of education, I have a bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology.
Thank you. We accept your credentials, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So a lot of the kind of background information I would typically go through in terms of location and configuration of the site has already been taken care of by Scott. So I'll start with, in preparation for this evening, I have visited the site. I have reviewed the site plans and the application package. In fact, coincidentally, attended a session of Bury the Hatchet this weekend with my neighbors who put it together. So it was I'll call it, chalk it up to research.
Did you bury the hatchet?
We buried the hatchet.
Okay.
It's actually really enjoyable kind of a group activity thing, and well, I'll get into that a little bit later. But the property is within your SED zone. Your SED zone is intended to be located in highway locations, and in fact, in your preamble to the SED zone, it indicates that it should take advantage of access to infrastructure such as highway or rail. This site doesn't have rail access, but certainly is along a state highway, Highway 33. It has a fairly generous listing of uses, which include offices, financial institutions, medical centers, warehouses, multipurpose recreation and sports complexes, and as of December 31st of this year, health clubs and fitness centers were added as permitted uses within your SED district. What's being proposed this evening are indoor recreational uses, and the Ninja facility, you understood the kind of crossover with recreation and fitness for young children, particularly in terms of being active and things like that. So it's very much akin with, I think, where the community is going in terms of these type of adaptive reuses for former industrial facilities, where we're seeing a waning industrial demand and looking to repurpose these essentially facilities that are larger footprint and more importantly, higher ceilings that can accommodate these type of uses. The board this evening is going to wrestle with variance relief, or use variance relief for both of these uses. This would be a D1 use variance, and I'll qualify that under the Medici criteria as a kind of precursor to going through that, because we do have to reconcile that with your master plan and the municipal land use law. I'd like to point out a couple of points through your master plan that I thought were very much on point with this application. And those include in your November 21st, 2011 land use amendment to the master plan. It is a statement included that says, given the existing commercial development along Route 9 and continued transition of Route 33 from a low-volume roadway to a connector road, the development of surrounding communities in the 2011 draft of the Monmouth County Wastewater Management Plan, commercial uses in these corridors have become more viable. It's recommended that the municipality take a look to incorporate additional commercial and retail uses along these corridors where appropriately supported by infrastructure. And that is absolutely what your community is doing. I think in the earlier application that Mr. Cohen represented, you saw the type of fitness use that's being introduced and being considered by your council. You saw the changes that were done to the SED zone. The community is absolutely looking to create vibrancy in these commercial corridors. It recognizes Route 33 as a vibrant commercial corridor and seeks to encourage call it innovative reuses. And that's consistent with your 2014 master plan statement, which specifically as a goal includes the statement to encourage the redevelopment and revitalization, of vacant or underutilized properties. Again, this application is absolutely on point with that. They've been here before for use variances. This property has an extraordinarily high vacancy rate at over 38%, and we are seeking to do some innovative and cooperative infill with that, with something that's a viable and complementary use to what's already there. With respect to the municipal land use law and reconciliation of the points of the MLUL, I believe we're on point with what's defined as, and I'll go through the lettering in the MLUL, A, purposes of zoning, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state of New Jersey in a manner which promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. These uses in particular provide recreational outlets for children and for adults. That's something that your SCD zone and the fitness and health club purposes within your zone seek to encourage. It specifically states we should look to encourage a variety of recreation and fitness uses throughout the community. This is advantageous to the public and I think certainly promotes the general welfare. We also look to M, which is to encourage the coordination of various public and private procedures and activities shaping land development with a view of lessening the cost of such development and to the more efficient use of land. In this case, we have an existing industrial center that we're seeking to repurpose. It's been struggling with leasing for quite some time. I think this, as was just mentioned, will fill Building 9, and we're hoping to acquire other uses, both those permitted and perhaps also complementary to fill the balance of the vacancies. Finally, just to backtrack a little bit to G, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses in accordance to respective environmental requirements to meet the needs of the New Jersey citizens. Again, we have a highway location, we have ample parking available on this property pursuant to Mr. Kennel's testimony. We'll be able to provide adequate circulation, and we'll certainly work that out with your engineer and your planner in order to provide safe circulation for pedestrians and vehicles on the site. I think this is an appropriate location, given its location, the context of the location, the surrounding uses, and the ease by which the citizens, both from Howell and Freehold and other communities, can access the property, and hopefully have two new successful tenants in the property. So that brings us to the variance relief, and that is going to be under the Medici test. The Medici test is essentially we have to prove either a hardship or, in this case, particular suitability of the site. As I had mentioned, I believe the site is particularly suited given its highway location, given the purposes of the SCD zone in terms of promoting these types of while not on point with recreational uses, but fitness, health uses, and encouraging the differential type of uses to be introduced to repurpose and to fill vacant space within the community. It's on a highway location, there's ample parking, there's ample circulation on this price, and I'm certain with some of the modifications that we spoke about this evening, we can create a more than safe circulation pattern, parking pattern, and access pattern for all the people who would visit both the Ninja and the Bury the Hatchet property. So in terms of the Medici reconciliation, we do have to speak to as to why these type of uses were omitted to your zone plan, from your zone plan. Well, while they were initially omitted, your zone plan is being expanded. As we just demonstrated, it's been expanded to include health clubs and fitness facilities, and it recognizes the need to revitalize and to rehabilitate vacant properties. I believe we're on point with those goals of your master plan, and I believe certainly these type of indoor recreational uses do have an aspect of fitness and recreation as well. Axe throwing, quite frankly, in reading about it at first, it is what's defined as a target sport, and it's in the same category as, say, a bowling or archery. It requires specialized lanes and specialized practices, but it is a target sport. And with the Ninja facility, while it is something that's enjoyable by kids, popular by the TV show American Ninja Warrior, it does have a certain level of fitness and activity that's great for kids and as well as adults, and it requires a significant amount of hand-eye coordination and is generally a great way to get out and to promote those type of healthy atmospheres. So I do think it's consistent with what your zone plan seeks to do, and I think it can be reconciled in terms of the direction that the zone plan is going, particularly in recognizing some expanded uses within the SED district. Finally, in terms of the negative criteria, we have to talk not only about reconciliation with your ordinance and master plan, which I believe I've already addressed previously in the points through your master plan, but we have to talk about whether there are any nuisances created or any nuisance or hardship or anything that would be a negative to to the neighbors. In this case, the building is to the rear of the property, there's ample parking. The facility has operated with multiple users for many, many years, and it's certainly at a more intense occupancy level than is currently experienced. I'm certain the property can handle the traffic, the circulation of pedestrian flow once we're restriped, trash, noise, all would be accommodated. And the hours of operation here are reasonable in terms of there's no overnight activities, no late night activities going on. So in terms of the nuisances or the negative criteria, I don't see anything that would be a detriment or a negative effect upon any of the neighbors. So in reconciliation of the use variance, I certainly think there's ample consideration here for this board to consider approving this. I think it would be good for the center. I think it would be good for the community. It promotes a couple of new concepts to the community, which I think would be embraced. And from what I saw at the Old Bridge facility, well embraced. That was active, and all the lanes were taken on a Saturday afternoon. So I think this is a good overall application, and would ask the board to consider this favorably.
Jennifer?
I take no exception to the testimony provided. I think this is a very good adaptive reuse of industrial buildings. I see indoor recreational uses introduced into industrial parks all throughout the state as a very a good way to utilize existing space, as warehousing tends to move away. Pardon?
An empty existing.
Well,
space.
yes, exactly. But I mean, for example, we had a meeting this morning for some warehouse space, and we were told that like the Lakewood Industrial Park is 100% occupied, and I would venture to guess that at least 50% of those occupied spaces are recreational in nature. So this is just kind of the trend that we're seeing. I agree that there's really no negative impact, and I think that once we I think the biggest issue that we had to sort out, which took a little time, was the parking and how it worked. And I think that once they submit to us, the updated circulation pedestrian plan, that we can make sure there's a safe means of ingress, egress for pedestrians. I take no exception, and I don't feel like there's any negative impact associated with the application.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board members? None?
I just have one, I'm not sure who's going to answer this, but since both of these uses are at night, how's the lighting in that area? Especially when the parking is further away from...
Well, there is lighting in that area, but we'd certainly be happy, since we're dealing with circulation and striping and all of those things in the event the board were to approve it, to also submit to demonstrate compliance with the lighting requirements. That would not be an issue.
It is an existing parking area. I think that certainly would go a long way in, easing any concerns with the lighting if they provided that.
Yeah, go ahead.
A quick question, I don't know if it's for your planner, or if Scott can answer it. Is there any proposed signage with the application, other than, I'm assuming you're going to put some stuff in the big sign on Route 33, and then anything in the immediate vicinity of the building?
That's all we're proposing. The only other signage would be
The directional sign?
stuff.
Okay, so you're going to, the one on Route 33, you're going to put stuff for the two uses, and then anything in the vicinity of the building, on the building, in the front? So there's one sign, it looks like, right as you come in from the north. It looks like there's an existing sign there. Is that going to be?
You mean along 33?
No, as you come in right on the north side of the building, there's like
monument side of the building, yes.
Yeah, is that going to be changed? Is it going to be modified? Is there going to be an additional one for the Ninja Warrior? And the board, I think the board just wants to know, I don't know if they take issue with it, but I think technically
As long as it's in compliance and it's approved.
Okay, anything that we would do would be in compliance.
Yes,
Yes.
We're
And
going to
I'm-
submit to Matt and
Yes.
have him approve it.
Yeah, I'm certain there'll be some identification signage at the doorways to say this is Ninja, this is Bury the Hatchet.
Yes, sir.
So just a statement, right? 14-year-olds, parents, sometimes they have younger children that are going to probably be accompanying the visits to the site. So my concern, of course, would be, improving the site, make sure we don't put parents and young children in harm's way, when their kids are visiting the site. So there needs to be some lighting and signs and control of traffic and pedestrian walkways. I mean, other than that, I agree with you, Jen. As long as they can make that happen, you know, we're,
I think that's
They did commit to
acceptable,
giving
and
us-
we'll work that out with your
They
planner
did
and your
commit to
engineer.
giving us that pedestrian circulation plan, which was my primary concern with this type of user in the area. So I have no doubt that between the three of us, we could come up with, you know, a scenario that would be safe.
Chair, and then just one item, just for the record, it's in the Monmouth County Board of Health review. They did say that they need an engineer certification that the existing septic system is gonna be able to handle the new two proposed uses, so.
Okay.
That's gonna be a condition of the approval.
Okay.
And both facilities plan on having restrooms? and
Yes,
ADA compliant?
yes,
Any showers?
no.
No showers, no locker rooms, these are just essentially accommodations for the,
Okay, any other questions from the professionals? Any from the board? Seeing none, can I have a motion to open to public?
Motion open?
Motion by
Second.
Mr. O'Donnell, seconded by Mr. Moretti, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone in the audience wish to come forward, ask a question, or place a comment on the record? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Motion by Mr. San Clemente, seconded by Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
seconded by Mr. O'Donnell. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none. Professionals, any further? Would you like to
Sure,
have
we,
a summation real quick?
sure, we respectfully request that you grant this application for all of the reasons that have been discussed, subject to all of the conditions that have also been discussed. Thank you.
Jen? Ron, do you have any issues of the board moving forward with this?
I don't either.
Charles? Board members, do y'all have any
No,
concerns
No,
moving
we
forward
should-
with this?
we should move forward.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
Members of the board, I'd like to recommend, based on the testimony and stipulations, conditions, I believe the planner made a great case for this. I think the traffic can be accommodated, and based on that, I think it's a need for this. I think it's a great undertaking, and I'd like to make a motion to approve this application.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Mertens, seconded by Mr. Hughes. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Massa?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. San Clemente?
Yes.
Chairman Nansen?
Absolutely. And we're going to lean very heavy on our professionals and you guys to get this through. Y'all work together, and I see no problem with this.
Thank you very much,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Okay, any further business of the board? And I want to thank the board for sticking it out to get this approved.
It's a no-brainer.
I
want to thank you,
appreciate it. Guys, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Motion by Mr. Moretti, seconded by Mr. Roscoe. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. Zoning Board adjourned at 10:40.